So perhaps we can wait a little bit.
Lúc hùអង្គទយគាត់នៅតាមផ្លូវគាត់មាន bad connection លើ internet
But ឃើញគាត់ message មក Okay, everyone, can you see my screen?
Yes, teacher.
I have to speak in English. However, Anton is not here because if I speak in Khmer, when he would like to check the video or record to see some explanation about the lessons, he cannot understand. So I must speak in English. I was not here. Today we will cover our first session related to the topic of dynamic system theory. So normally, previously when I teach in the class, I will give you like a short document to Microsoft Word 2 page, and then it will talk about the difference between dynamic and static systems. So it just only like a system is the same, but our system, dynamic system, is like a system that stay over time and they produce some characteristic that distinguish a kind of this system. So today you will know how to distinguish what is the dynamic system. Our content today we just focus like three main points: generalization to the dynamic systems, the use of the model and technique of the dynamic system. Sorry everyone. Sorry. Please I am sorry for the interrupts. So, okay, let's continue. So, as you see in this figure and the page, it is the definition of the dynamic system. If we focus on the dynamic system, it's a kind of theory or framework or something that led you to understand about the way that it can predict the movement or the state of system itself in a high complexity, the movement of changing the state of the system. We call it the dynamic system. So some term of the system can represent by the formula, mathematic formula. Some term of the system cannot represent by mathematic formula, can represent by some physical formula, and some technique of the system can represent by the other term of the system. So generally, when you try to understand the phenomenon of one system, however, it's like a too complete or less complete, or the system that try to change constantly over the time, we call like a dynamic system. So like you see in this figure, you see they make a movement over time, but the way they try to make a movement, they change the state only to two states, left state and right state, and the position of the ball P is in different position, left and right. We call it a kind of the dynamic system. But when you try to focus in the other definitions, they can say that the variety of the permanent of non-living and the living system. So it can be both. When you talk about the system, for example, a brain processing, you call it is a living system. But when you talk about some machine electronic device, and those device have function some of the functionality to produce something or produce some product, we call it non-living. So the definition is can be a variety of phenomenon in living and non-living system to display a non-linear behavior change over time. So in this case, when we talk about the non-linear behavior, you will see in the other slide the definition of non-linear and linear. So the definition still the same from the previous one, is the way to study how change of something or change of the system over time. We call it dynamic system. As you see, this galaxy. Its galaxy is have the movement from one, we can call that one place or one, we cannot say one device because it's a things. So we can say that movement from one thing to the other thing, or we can say that from one star to the other star, all have the movement because of the gravity. So in this case, it's change over time. You can call the journey of the Earth around the sun. It's also called the dynamic system. So when you try to predict the change, or you can produce by some motion of the system. So those things we also call the dynamic system. So when you try to come up with the answer to answer the question about the definitions, you can combine all these three definitions, or you can say just like understanding, studying of the phenomenon of non-living or living system in the complexity way to try to find out the change of the thing over time, or to display some nonlinear behavior over time. Every answer is possible to understand. At least you say something about changing over time. So we call it a mixed system. So this is one example about the dynamic system. So in the property of the dynamic system, you have one thing we call state space, or the other thing is path space. It's a set of the state. So when you give the definition of it, it's a kind of model that used within the dynamic system to capture the change of the system state over time. For in this case, when you try to describe your systems, you have to make something. So the way that you try to make something we call state space or space state. For example, in this case, in order to describe something, like I say, this is just only example to describe humans. So we have like two property to describe the state of the humans. In order to describe the state of the dynamic system, it can two or three or multiple dimensional graphics to show up for our system. For example, in this case, I try to describe about the state of the humans. So you have like two-dimensional data or two-dimensional graph to show up. But when you try to describe the state of the star in the galaxy, so they have a lot of dimensional. So in order to describe those kind of things, you have the high dimensional graph. So the other thing you can give the definition to the state is the set of the parameter to describe the systems. As you see in the figure, I try to describe the state of the humans. So we just give only four state of human. It's not like a real ones, because the human state can be more than these ones, but I just pick up only four. Like you see, the first one is dynamic. It's one state of the system, is a kind of humans, and the other one is like a normal. So the normal is the kind of one state of the humans, and the other type is like an inactive humans, is a kind of one state of the humans, and the last one is dead. Combine together all of them. If you store it, it will be like, you can store in one dimensional or two-dimensional graphic to show to the audience. So the set of this element we call state space or space state. In this class, if you cannot understand about something, you can interrupt me immediately and ask questions in some keyword that you understand. So you can describe differently about the state of the something. For example, when I try to describe the state of one living, it's not kind of the system, but just only one living component or living thing. It's just only example. So, for example, I try to describe the state of one soup. The soup can be hot, cold, normal, spicy, can be delicious, can be too sweet, too salty. All this kind of thing we call state space of the space. So do you have something can represent this kind of system? No, you cannot. So for the example, you have disease, you have grief, or you have a flu. So the symptom of those kind of thing, the situation of the disease can represent by something, the combination by some element. So those kind of thing we also call the system. It's kind of the disease system. So the system symptom can represent by different state of space. For example, you have a high temperature, you have a low temperature, you have a normal temperature, you feel headache, you feel something that loss of conscious. So those kind of the state we call state space or a space space. So in the dynamic system, we try to model something. So As you know that the definition is the study of the fundament about the change of the system. So the system, our system can represent by two ways that we use like a differential equations. So our differential equation can be observed in two ways. One is continuous and the other one is discrete. As you know that in digital signal processing, you can study the signal into two terms. One is the continuous signal in period of time, and the other one you try to observe in a specific time of the signal. You make a sampling inside it, and then you will get the specific value of the signal in the specific of the time. So as you see in this figure, we have one function fx equal to 4 cosine 2 pi of x. So when you try to plot it in our any any kind of the programming language or the IDE, for example, in this case, they use MATLAB. So when you try to plot a value, if you try to plot a value from one period of time, for example, in the first figure and the graph number one, you see it's a period of time from 0 to 0.5 and 1. So this period we can call in the domain of time 0 to 1. You will see the scale of the traffic as in this figure. But if you try to segment it to see the specific value, for example, I try to segment it into 100 points. So in those cases, you will can capture a specific value of the signal. How much is it in the, for example, in 0.1 minute or second? So when you try to continue to study about something, it's a kind of the study of the model in the dynamic system. Its status can represent in two ways, continuous and discrete. And you can see the definition between the continuous system and discrete system. In some way, they call continuous event and discrete events. So it's a change in time interval, and it's a change in the discernible of time interval or iterative. When you say that it is iterative, you will be able to say that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 as you count in the loop. So in the equation of the continuous earth event, you can represent by the differential equation. You have dy over dx equal to fx. So you in order to calculate or to get the value of y, you have the differential equation of fx dx. So this is the one way that can represent the continuous events. But if you would like to describe it in the discrete way or discrete event, the value of y can be equal to the summation of fxi, that I from one value to the other value. For example, in this figure, you have I, the value runs from 0 to n, that n, the maximum of n is 100. So in this case, the value of I is run from 0 to 100. Excuse me. Anyone can you mute yourself because you have the noise come with you. Who is open the mode? Oh, sorry, thank you. So in this thing, in order to model one system, you can model in two different ways. One is continuous and the other one is discrete. So the difference is just only that you try to study the change in the time interval. You can use this kind of equation is continuous differential equation by integrating equation. And if it's the kind of the discrete event, you can use like a summations equation that you can run from one of the initial values to the last maximum of iterations. So this is the way that can you define the model of the system. So the system can be generated into some specific motions. As you see in the first figure, the motion of the dropping on the ball is based on the situation that you try to capture the characteristic of the system. But when we reach to one way, it will drop to the final we called equilibrium. Equilibrium is mean that in this case it's like a stable state of the system. So when you try to capture the motion of the system, you can capture in two motions. One is transient, the other one is periodic. For the transient motion, as you see in this figure, it's the first figure. When you try to make a movement of the system, you see the state of the system have been categorized by the ball. So when it reaches to one specific equilibrium, or you can call equilibrium, it means that the system state no movements. It's called the equilibrium. So in those kind of movement or motion, so in the figure you call it a transient. How about the periodic motions? In this figure, I show out for you the movement of the Earth around the Sun. So those produce the pattern of the period. What does it mean in period? It means that a repeat pattern of something. If in the one specific of time, it can repeat one cycle, so it called the periodic motions. In the other example, you can explore the motion of sine equation or cosine equation, because those kind of equation or those kind of signal also produce the periodic motions. It repeat the pattern of the cycling. So in the physical model, when you try to make a transition motions or the movement, in this figure we can represent by the physical model, because as you see, I try to define the power of P equal to mg, that g is the value of the gravity. So we call it this dissipative system, or in the physical model, in order to move something, you have to use a force. So the kind of force to make a system move, like you see in the first figure, when you try to make a ball move, human have to use the force, and the force by some mechanism of the system to make the ball move. And because of the gravity, you can capture the ball into the ground. After that, when they have no power, it's been the power equal to 0, it's been that our ball no movement anymore. And this kind of the model you study already about it when you was in grade 9 and grade 12. Also ITC in the first year and second year, you also already study when the power equal to 0. So it means that our system have no movement, and it can movement again because of the force. So those kind of things we call dissipative systems. So this is the way that you try to define the motion of the system, and the motion that can divide into two kind of two motion, it transient or periodic. But when you try to focus on the signal in data communications, you define your system transmission into two phase, or signal transmission into kind of thing. One is periodic and one is aperiodic. And definition about the periodic and aperiodic is just only periodic is a kind of signal that repeat some specific pattern in the period of time, a cycle. So it means that it's kind of the periodic signal. And how about the transient? How about the aperiodic signal? It's a kind of signal that do not repeat a pattern in the period of time. So we call it aperiodic. When you make a combination of the signal, when the periodic signal combine all together, we call a combination of those periodic signal into one signal, we call still the periodic. But if you have like 1,000,000 thousands of periodic signal plus one aperiodic signal, so the answer of the combination will become the aperiodic signal. So in our dynamic system, in the system, they have their properties. So like in this case, we have X as a state, T as a time, Mui is an action of control. So beta is a kind of parameter. So in this case, I can represent, you can represent your system any kind of the way. But in this case, we just represent is one of functions f, and our state, our system equal to function there of the state, because it can link to the other state based on the terms. So in this case, our property of the system can depend on four main kind of thing: state of the systems, term that they have movement, the action control. For example, if I move back to the first, this kind of thing, you have say A is a kind of mechanism that try to move the ball here. So when you try to move M, the position of M, so those kind of thing is the way you control the action of the ball, or you can say it's the kind of the clock. So when you try to move M's, so M is the kind of the control actions. You try to control the movements of the P. So those kind of thing we call Mui. And how about beta? Is a set of parameter. Normally, in order to conduct one system or conduct one thing, you have a lot of parameter. So in this case, beta can be one or two or three or a set of parameter. For example, in order to create one soup, you have to put a lot of ingredients. So those ingredients we call beta, because it is a parameter to make something change over time to make a soup. So this is the property of the systems. So in order to evaluate one system, for example, you try to evaluate that this kind of food or the soup is delicious or not. So you have to have something to evaluate. So in order to represent the measuring of the function or to measuring of the system, you can write anything to represent. But in this case, I just use one function is g, and m is a result of measuring function. So we say that m equal to g of x. So in this you have two parts. System property, we have x is a state, but in this case, measuring a function is not x that belong to state. It's just only like one variable, because in order to evaluate something, you can have one variable or two variable. It depends on how you can evaluate. For example, in this case, I just use one function m equal to g of x. It's the measuring function. It's just only representations. If you ask me that how can I construct the function of measuring, it depends on how, what is the problem that you would like to solve, or what is kind of the system that you would like to evaluate. For example, I pick up one kind of cryptography system that try to find the key sensitivity. It means that the relationship between key in the cryptography. For example, in this case, like you see, our key sensitivity equal to 100% divided by 2 multiplied by the data length, and the first data and the second data. In this case, the first data is the output of ciphertext of one cryptography using one key ones, and the X2 ciphertext using key 2, and key number 1 and key number 2, the difference is just only the last bit. For example, if I use um for example, if I use password technology for the first one, the last bit is y represented by 8 bit. So I just only change y to z or change y to x. So our password, our key, the difference only just the last um just only the last symbol and the last alphabet or the last symbol. If you change just only y to x or y to z, when you convert it to binary, the value of ASCII, the difference just only 1 bit, because it's just a consequence of the alphabet XY or YZ, just only 1 bit different. So we would like to see that if the key or if the system use similar key, just only 1 bit different. So can we produce different result of the ciphertext or not? So our system use a kind of key sensitivity evaluation function or measuring function to evaluate the key sensitivity of our cryptography system. So this is just only one example of measuring function. So if you have the other thing, for example, in image processing, in order to find out the redundant point of the intensity of the image, you have to find the value of entropy. So the function or the mathematical formula that represent the way to find the value of measuring entropy of the image, you have one function. So can represent by different equation. So as in conclusion of the measuring functions is a kind of some mathematical formula or some formula that you can evaluate the performance, or you can say in cryptography is kind of accuracy. So to evaluate that our system is accurate or not, good or not, or something is, for example, if you focus on food delicious or not. So this is a kind of measuring function, and each function can be constructed based on the goal of the system. So when you talk about dynamic system, when you try to represent something in the dynamic systems, they have a lot of challenge that why we need this kind of dynamic system theory. Why we don't use something like a small mathematical formula to represent it? Why you just don't use a kind of consequential diagram, use case diagram, activity diagram to represent one system? Why you need a kind of dynamic systems? So in this case, when you try to represent one thing, for example, a human brain processing, do you have any formula to represent a human process? You don't have. Because how your brain works, you don't have any mechanism or any flow that can represent by mathematical formula. So our function f, you cannot be construct in the specific way. For example, to calculate the root of second equation mathematics, you have some formula can be calculated or can be formed. But in this case, if I focus on this image, it's a kind of the brain mechanism. So the brain mechanism, you cannot represent by any mathematical formula, but you can understand the concept and convert to the other thing. So this is the first challenge in the mixed system theory, because you do not know how can you construct the f function in our system. So in the case that you try to generate the state of the system, can based on some characteristic. For example, the brain, when you try to describe the state of space or space state, sorry, space, you can describe some like a statistical array of the space, such as, for example, head age, normal. You think so much, so sometimes it's like unconscious or conscious answers. So those kind of the state you can represent, but if you try to form it out to let human calculate by something, for example, you try to let your computer to calculate the state of the brain, so you have to construct your applications or your solution inside your computer, but for the brain you cannot learn it. But in some cases, the qualification of the brain, because now in biotechnology, we use kind of the image to study about something of those kind of product, for example, in the blood cell of the cancer. So when you try to evaluate that this human have the cancer or not, so we just only bring the cell to the scope and then take the picture, and then you process those kind of the cell evaluations, so you can build your own application by evaluate the cancer. So some disease you can formula, but something you cannot formula. So the first challenge is mean that you cannot formula it by his specific mathematical equation, or some not just only mathematics, can be physics equation, mechanical, something like that. And the other one is a challenge is f is nonlinear. So the first definition of our systems, when I try to talk is linear or non-linear, it's kind of two things different. So when it is non-linear, so this is a challenge of the dynamic system. As I told you in the previous definitions, when we try to study about the change of phenomenon of the system, so of the non-linear behavior over time, so we call it as the dynamic system. So if it's linear, for example, our state system is linear system. You have one state equal to A multiplied by H. That A can be represented by some matrix, or A is kind of the coefficients, or A can be the constant. But when you try to say about the dynamic system, A can be 2 or 3 dimensional or higher dimensional graphics. So it's kind of the matrix. If you would like to predict some state with over time, so A can be formula with E power A x of the first initial state. If you ask me how can I prove these equations, you can just type linear equation proof or non-linear equation proofs in YouTube or in Google. You will see about the Taylor-Swift theorems. So Taylor-Swift theorem, you can prove about linear. So when you have the linear, you can distinguish also the non-linear. So for example, I have two systems. You see, it's a kind of the thing about frequency over time. It's a kind of system. So when we talk about linear system, you can predict the upcoming or the future point of the frequency or your signal. So it's kind of the periodic signal. So you can predict, for example, in like 1 minute of the signal, where is the position of signal, so you know exactly what it is because it's kind of linear. You just to use the function of mathematical equation to predict that kind of linear signal. But if it's like a non-linear, it's kind of the periodic or combination of the periodic. So in the state of frequency, it can describe by some characteristic. Some said that chaotic, some chaos about the confusion and diffusion of the signal, some harmonic, or the other thing can say it's kind of quasi-periodic. So in those kind of things, you cannot predict the pattern of the signal. So it's kind of non-linear system. For example, in cryptography, when you have input text as A in the plain text, and you would like to produce A in the other ciphertext. So the first A in the plain text produce something in the ciphertext, and the second A it produce something that those something, the first something and the second something is different. You cannot predict what it is. So this kind of thing is a kind of non-linear. But if you have the flow, for example, I try to use linear regression on linear functions. For example, y equal to ax plus b. So you still can predict the output of y in the next state. So in this case, still linear. This is the second challenge of the dynamic system. And the other thing challenge is about the dimensional of the data that you have been used. For example, this is can ADN or RNA, sorry. Or you can say that in some chemical substance to represent one product. For example, I try to represent some mineral product. So they have the combination, a lot of chemical substance. So it is a high of dimensional data to represent. So it's really difficult to represent those kind of things in one system. If we ask you to calculate or to form up one system to represent one product of mineral, can you do it? You still can do it because the combination, for example, to produce a gold, what is the combination of the gold? So the gold, normally the gold you have different level, different combination. If like a raw gold, you have only one substance. But if you talk about the kind of the gold, for example, I do not know how to say it in English, but I will explain you in Khmer. អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នានៅពេលអ្នកនរគ្នាចង់ទិញមាសទឹក10ទឹក5ទឹក7ទឹក3ទឹក8អីអញ្ចឹងអា level នៃមាសទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងគឺខុសៗគ្នាអញ្ចឹងអារបៀប construct របស់វាផ្សំពីសារធាតុគីមីខុសៗគ្នាអញ្ចឹងដើម្បីសិក្សា to form up អាហ្នឹងសំណួរសួរថាតើវាងាយស្រួលនឹង form up ទេវាមិនងាយស្រួលទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែសំណួរសួរថាអ្នកនរគ្នាអាច form up វាបានអត់បាន So this is also one challenge because it's really difficult to represent high dimensional data that you have used to represent something. So in the dynamic system is also the challenge. And the other thing is like in kind of human organic combinations. For example, to build a blood, what is the combination in the blood cell? They have a sugar, they have a salt, they have the water, they have some elements, calcium or something. So those kind of things to construct is very difficult to say to construct it because they have many elements to construct your system. But as a doctor or biography technology expert in science, can I represent the blood? Yes, you can. So in the other challenge is the multi-scale of the system. So in this example, you have the hand of the humans. When you try to zoom in one specific scale, so in this case, it's just only to distinguish only 4 states: macro, micro, nano, and atomic. For example, when you try to zoom up in one position, in micro, you will see the hands of the humans. When I try to zoom it up as a micro, you will see the other form of the skin of the human. And to try to zoom it out more, to be smaller, you will see the form of nano. And you zoom it out to the form of atomic, you will see a kind of ADN, RNA, or DNA of our scale cell. So how can I represent it? Because in one position of thing you can draw by your hands, but when you try to zoom it out, it still be the hands. But can you represent it drawing up the arm anymore? No, you cannot. When you try to zoom it up, when you try to zoom it up again, the process to represent is to be the cell of your organism. So it's the other things. And when you try to zoom it up again to the last, the smallest one, it is a kind of the cell, RNA or DNA. So can be represented by something, the other thing. So when you have something that can be the multi-scale, when you focus on one situation, can represent by one thing, and that when some situation it represent by the other thing. So we call it a multi-scale. So the kind of system is very difficult to represent by something. So this is the other challenge of the dynamic systems. Okay, the other challenge is about the transient or the chaos. So when you try, as you see in this figure, it produces something messy. So This is something that you can predict the pattern. You can predict the pattern, but the pattern produce something difficult to construct the formula. But in this kind of mathematics, for example, some graph, you can use exponential equation to represent it. But some graph, it's too difficult to use exponential. Just only one simple equation. It's too complicated equation that you call at our theory or definition of the dynamic system is a complete system. So this is one challenge, and those challenge we call chaos. And if you put the other norm, you can say chaotic systems or transient systems. So as you see, our system can be formula by f functions, and the property inside you have state, you have time, you have the action control of the system, and you have some parameter to make our system work. But in this case, I plus gx. So in this case, please do not confuse g is measuring function. G is the other function. So when you try to do something, for example, I try in technology way, auto driving car of Google. So when I try to produce some formula for driving, you try to produce some mathematical formula in order to control the car to driving, right? So the situation that you focus just only the road, but when our situation or environment of the road change state, for example, during the day, during the night, during the rain season. So during the day, during the night, during the rain season, those kind of things we call bias. So bias is kind of the other noise or internal force that plus it our system. So you cannot predict. So what is the noise kind of thing? So what it so the noise is produce a specific value. For example, during the day is our system of the auto driving car produce a better performance. But at night, when we have bias, it means that the way that our algorithm or driving car camera capture the environment, they cannot capture well. They have the obstacle, the noise from the environment. For example, the light of the other car, the light of the road, the dark of the night. So it produces some bias or some noise to make our system cannot work properly. Some internal force, for example, the wind flow, make a car movement is not like in our simulation. So those kind of thing is called bias or called noise or internal force. So this is one challenge to represent the system. If have no any noise or any force from outside, our system can represent by only one functional of f with four attributes that have been shown in screens. But if you have the other bias, there are a kind of interruptions, a kind of noise, or the other external force to involve in our system. So this is a challenge that you have to predict it. And the other such challenge is about latence of variable. So I cannot find the scientific way to explain you about this kind of challenge, but I just find the example thing to let you understand about one thing. So when you try to understand about those kind of things, for example, I try to cook one food. Actually, I can limit the same ingredients, something like a specific standard ingredient. But in one case, I would like to ask you the taste of food for different people. Can you evaluate, for example, I just put 1 gram of sugar. The first audience said that, okay, I like sweet, so this food tastes very good. But the second audience comes say that, oh, this food is too sweet. So you cannot predict exactly value of the variable. So we can say the latent variable. So you have to estimate it. For example, in your family, you say that our family's taste a little bit sour, less salty, and then a little bit sweet. So your family test this kind of value. So you can predict a number of ingredient of the food that you can put into your food. But in the other family, they have different kind of the test. So they will put a different. So when you try to form up, for example, I try to cook a curry. So the curry from the first family will use different amount of ingredient from the second family. So you cannot predict the exactly value. You have to estimate it. So when you have to estimate it, we also call the challenge in the dynamic system is latent variable. So when you try to form up some kind of dynamic systems, you always ask that teacher, when you try to form up the system, what is it used for? Why we did it? So when you try to form up the model of the dynamic system in the common popular way in machine learning algorithm, it's used for the prediction. For example, I try to use a figure as I told you in the previous practical class. I have the picture of the sky and also the wind speed. I would like to predict that tomorrow will it rain or not. So this is a kind of the technique of a model that we try to predict the future. If you say that, can I predict the past is something that already gone. So we do not need to predict it. It's just only future. For example, I would like to predict that, okay, I have the classification of one thing. I try to classify the image. The input image is human or animal. So I can use a kind of the mathematic model to predict whether it is a kind of human picture or the animal picture. And the other one is kind of design or optimizations. What does it mean, design or optimization? If, for example, you try to produce one model, for example, the model of water project management of model of water flow from the mountains. So when you construct something, you observe the performance of the system. For example, you construct the flow of the water. When the first contract comes, you observe the movement of the water. It produces less electricity band for your band. Sorry, design the band. It produces less electricity. So when you observe it, you change to the other thing, to the other flow of the water to produce the best result of your band's electricity. So you optimize it from one state to the other state and one those kind of state to the other more state. It's mean the way you try the design, you also can use the model of the dynamic system to control in the real-time optimization. What does it mean? Those kind of things. For example, in simulation work in the aircraft, you just write in the simulation. You don't have any interruption or bias or no interruption. But when you, for example, you fly the plane in the real, you have to face with the cloud, you have to face with the wind, you have to face with the changing environment, cold, hot temperature. So in the real-time optimization to control the balance of the planes, you have to control it. So our model in the dynamic system also can be used in those kind of the work. And the other thing is understanding about the interpretable or generalization of the system. For example, I try to make a soup of noodle. So I can make a regular to be standardized. For example, the rule of something, regular of something. So you can make generalize it to make it as a regular system. For example, in the third year student, I try to ask you to make a cat ball. You can make a cat ball any kind of the way as you want, but we have the standard die or standard way, A and B. So it may make a rule. For example, the color of the white ball, the white menthol. So this is just the way that you try to interpret into the generalization or to make the understand of the human. So for example, if you just messy with the cap ball without order or standard, you do not know what is the cap ball that make a connection of the power electricity and what is the cable wire that make a connection of the data transmission. But if you make it like a regular way and also a standard way, you have generate the understanding to the human to interpret to the human that okay, this four string produce electricity power to our machines and this four string transfer the data to our machine. So this is the kind of use of model in our dynamic system. If you ask me, they have only those kind of four things. So one point can be anything represented. So they have a lot of things. So in order to make it, what should you use? For example, to make a prediction, what should I use to make a prediction? So now we have like a common technique that everyone know about is, for example, how can I make a movement on a robotic? So you build kind of system, mechanic logic system. Some people use artificial intelligence in machine learning algorithms to produce a brain of the robot. So this kind of the technique that they use. Nowadays, we have a lot of machine learning algorithms that they can produce of those kind of model. For example, you have the regression equation. It can be linear or non-linear. For example, it produces a specific pattern of the thing that you can predict it in specific of time. You call it linear. You can, for example, you write equation y equal to cosine or sine x, or you can say x plus b. But when your regression equation have the correlation from the first input to the final input. So the specific input you cannot predict because it depends on the first input and the first value of system. So also can call it the nonlinear. So you can use regression. Some technique is used like a neural network, deep learning, and in neural network you have a simple neural network, you have artificial neural network, you have the convolutional neural network, you have the forest algorithms, you have deep learning, you have extreme learning, you have reinforced learning method. So those kind of things in neural network is the way that you can construct the model, or something is about the genetic programming. For example, I just pick up one algorithm or one understanding to represent genetic programming. For example, do you know an algorithm? Everyone, do you know an algorithm? So I just okay. Before I go to an algorithm, I just try to explain you the concept for an algorithm. When, for example, normally ants always go outside to collect the food. So do you, how can ant remember the path to find the food? For example, one ant can find the big of the sugar and you have to collect it, but as ant is so small, it cannot collect all. Why? In the period of time, they have many ants come up. They speak to each other. They communicate each other. I say yes, but if you say they speak to each other, I will say no. But if you said that is this can speak to each other or not? No. Can it communicate each other? Yes, but how? So in the mechanism of the ant, it drops some like a liquid or some smell that make the other ant can follow up the path of that thing. So because of kind of that structure of and behavior in the human, we also can produce a specific pattern of the flow. So if the pattern can produce better result, the next path will follow that kind of patterns. For example, I try to test one formula in automations. I think we all up the slide, so I just explain you in the picture. Sorry. Okay, so I try to explain you in this figure. So I just only use automata way because, for example, based on algorithms. So in automata, we have the initial state. So I just, okay, I have one initial state here. I just put number ones. And from ones to the final state, I just like put n is, okay, put f is the final state. In order to make a traffic from 1 to f, in this case, in an algorithm, you will say, okay, 1 is the location of the house of home or castle of the ants, and f is the food position that ant have to collect. So how can ant make a traffic? For example, they have a lot of paths along the road. For example, I put 3, 2, 4, 7, 5, 6. For example, when I first ant to go to move to collect, go to this way, and the other ant go to this way, other ant go to this way, and go to the last way. And this one is one. For example, just only this pattern. All the ant can reach to the destinations, but when in the period of time, you will see that the ant will go to only one optimal path. For example, from 1, 4, and final, they produce only 2 seconds to reach destinations. So the other more than 2 seconds. In those cases, you will see that for the first iterations, they go split all the paths. For the second iterations, is the first and the second iteration, they will, okay, the path 1 for f will increase amount of the ant, go to some specific iteration I call n iterations. Sorry. So our n will produce or will conduct only one specific path with much maximum amount of n. If you ask that, still they follow the other paths, some still, but they will try to focus only one patterns to see what is the optimal solution or what is the optimal path that they should follow. So this is we call also genetic algorithm followed by an technique and algorithm. And the other example that I would like to show you is about, okay, when I try to follow some pattern of the bird fly, you see the bird fly with specific pattern. If they have amount of birds and they change over time, but you have one optimal leader, optimal bird that produce a pattern that the other bird have to follow. And the other example is about the swarm algorithm is the other way. I focus on the fish. So in the sea, you all see the picture of the fish, always go to the group and produce some pattern because we have one leader or group that find the optimal path to movement. So those kind of things is the way that human learn and then can produce something to make the system pattern. So we call it a genetic programming. So for the lessons, the pattern of the lesson, I think I have only this because now it's 1 hour already that I speak about the lessons. So do you have any concern so far for our lessons? Do you understand what I'm talking?
លោកគ្រូសុំសួរមួយបើវាជា
Okay.
dynamic system អញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើងចង់ design ឲ្យ clarify ថាយើងយក system ហ្នឹងយកមកប្រើលើរបស់អីមួយហ្នឹងអញ្ចឹងយើង define មិនបើវា state វារៀងញ៉ៃញ៉ៃវាតាម curriculum ដែលយើងកំណត់អីចឹងហ្នឹង
ហ្នឹងហើយជាធម្មតា okay, I just would like to translate your question into English because we have many steps of the system. So if it's not like specific way, how can we define our system to put or to use in a specific purpose or mechanism? For example, in a dynamic system, you cannot produce accuracy 100%. You have to build a model. So because of our building the model, we try to find the optimal one. It means that you try to find the best of the solution. However, it cannot produce 100%. For example, in our example, I try to build a model of image classification. Can you classify 100% correct or not? You cannot. It's based on how model you make it. So in order to make our model can produce the accurate data, you use sample of data to train our model. And our model change based of the time. And when we reach to one point that produce like a acceptable result of classifications, you will use those kind of model in the real world. If you ask me that those kind of things can specific 100% correct, no, it cannot correct because it's a dynamic ones. You cannot make it like a specific or accurate result. For example, weather broadcast, weather change every time. You cannot use only one formula to make a weather broadcast, but can we still use it? You can still build an assumption, but accurate 100%? No. So, for example, in the weather broadcast, the problem is very like sensitive. We cannot predict it into the specific way. So, but it still can represent by the dynamic system. It can still, but very difficult. So it's difficult. So in order to avoid this difficult thing, we use some technique. For example, as you see at the moment, I describe about the machine learning algorithms. So we have to use a kind of machine learning algorithm, for example, neural network for image classification or predator forecast. I just use a sample of previous data to train my model by using neural network. After that, as a result, I will receive one kind of model can produce like acceptable result. So it is difficult, but you can still do it. Can you catch up my answer?
បាទលោកគ្រូ
Okay ចឹងខ្ញុំសូមបញ្យល់ជាខ្មែរបន្តិចសម្រាប់គ្នាយើងជាធម្មតាដោយសំណួរគ្នាយើងគឺថាលោកគ្រូអាហ្នឹងវា state វាមានច្រើនញញអញ្ញៃធ្វើម៉េចយើងអាច represent វាសម្រាប់ goal អីមួយ specific ទៅដូចប្រាប់ចឹងដោយសារតែវាមាន challenge ទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងហើយទៅ dynamic system របស់យើងស្ថិតនៅក្នុង category មួយដែល still in use ហើយសំខាន់យើងសួរថាលោកគ្រូចាប់ធ្វើម៉េចទៅដូចប្រាប់ចឹងដើម្បី build to solve problem represent in dynamic system បានយើង use technique មួយចំនួនឧទាហរណ៍នៅក្នុងthe use of model មិញអ្នកនរ use some prediction អ្នកនរ use some design optimization in the real time processing ជាធម្មតា real time processing វា dynamic ខ្លាំងវាដូររហូតអញ្ចឹងធ្វើម៉េចយើង observe លើ process របស់វា you change something when you change one flow មានន័យថាយើងដូររហូតដល់ flow ណាមួយដែលយើងគិតថាអូខេ flow វាដើរតាម flow ហ្នឹងវា produce result មួយដែលអាចទទួលយកបានអញ្ចឹងអា result ទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងហើយយើង build model មួយ by training it use machine learning technique ដើម្បីទៅ train model មួយហ្នឹងអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគឺជា solution ដែលយើងនឹងប្រើប្រាស់ Do you have the other questions? You don't have questions? Okay. If you don't have question, I have question for you. Nguồn hạ. So the question is that normally when you try to produce one system in simulation, it's easy because you don't have like interruption, you don't have the noise, or you have the force for internal outside. But in which case that we can ignore by us? Can you understand my question?
ខ្ញុំអត់សូវយល់ទេលោកគ្រូ
សម្រាប់សំណួរសួរថាជាធម្មតានៅពេលដែលយើង operate ទៅលើ dynamic system វាតែមាន challenge មួយគឺ noise ឬក៏ internal force ឬក៏អ្នកនរគ្នាអាចនិយាយថាជា bias ចឹងនៅពេលដែលវាមាន bias សំណួរសួរថាជាធម្មតា bias វាពិបាកនៅក្នុងការ estimate something សំណួរសួរថានៅពេលណាដែលយើងអាច ignore bias នឹងបាន
ខ្ញុំអត់ដឹងទេ
Anyone can answer replaced by your friends?
Lúc hù noise ដែលលោកគ្រូប្រាប់ថា bias ហ្នឹងដើម្បីនេះignore វាបានតតែយើងដកវាចេញពីរបស់ដែលយើងមានដូច
ជាធម្មតាដកបានឧទាហរណ៍អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាសម្លម្ជូរអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាដកម្ជូរចេញបានទេ
ដូចអត់បានតថែមឬក៏ថែម
So what is the meaning of bias elimination in this case? Because bias is very difficult to predict in the real system. So in some term, you have to ignore bias or eliminate bias. So how can you eliminate it?
ដូចរូបភាពអញ្ចឹងយើងថែម filter អីថែមអញ្ចឹងបើ bias សម្រាប់នេះយើងគួរតែថែម filter ឬក៏មិន
Okay, so in the challenge of bias, when our bias make effective to the systems, one thing you have to normalize our bias to be a small sensitive in the system. Small sensitive, what does it mean? Small sensitive is mean that less effective the systems. For example, in the real work, when you try to make a sour soup, ជាធម្មតាអ្នកនរអាចដកម្ជូរបានទេដកម្ជូរលេងក៏ sour soup ហើយកុំតែសំណួរសួរថាស្លហ្នឹងខ្ញុំមិនបាច់ដាក់ខ្ទឹមសបានអត់
បាន
ហ្នឹងអញ្ចឹងជាធម្មតានៅពេលខ្ញុំ normalize ទិន្នន័យ system មកហ្នឹងដកអា not related or not sensitive element ចេញអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងយើង reduce bias បានហើយចំណុចទី2ដែលពូម៉ាក់យើងនិយាយអញ្ចឹងនៅក្នុង image processing ជាធម្មតា image ត្រូវតែមាន noise មិនអញ្ចឹងទេអញ្ចឹងអា noise មួយចំនួនយើងអាច deduct វាចេញបានដោយសារអីឧទាហរណ៍យើងលុបទិន្នន័យនឹងចេញក៏រូបភាពរបស់យើងនៅតែមើលស្គាល់ដដែលអញ្ចឹង those kind of thing we reduce noise, we reduce bias in our system. In the other system example, how can I say? In our system example នៅពេលដែលមាន bias តើយើងអាច ignore bias អីបានខ្លះ Okay, in the concert I would like to sing songs. Normally I am not alone because in the concert they have too many crowded people, too many people inside. So when I sing their popular song, they will sing follow back. So their voice and my voice always have interruption together. But the output to the speaker, why they heard only me? Because I try to reduce bias by use a kind of microphone that capture only my voice from the specific distance. From the other system, they cannot capture. So this is the way that you can destroy the bias or noise. So if you call answer it in theory, you will produce something different by, okay, when I can ignore the bias. You can ignore the bias when your bias or your noise have less sensitive to the system or less effective to the system or less impact to the system. So we call is the way that you can ignore the bias. ចឹងដូចគ្នាយើងប្រាប់គ្នាយើងមិនអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំសួរថាគ្នាយើងមានចម្ងល់សួរទេអត់ដល់ពេលខ្ញុំសួរវិញឆ្លើយចេញ in our class in this course the name of the class is modeling and simulations. So in this case I do not need to teach you or guide you in some of machine learning algorithm but we need it ចឹងខ្ញុំប្រាប់គ្នាយើងថានៅក្នុងថ្នាក់របស់យើងដើម្បី formulate some form ខ្ញុំអាចប្រើ form ដូចកាលឆ្នាំមុនខ្ញុំប្រើតែសម័យការបន្ទាត់ y ស្មើ ax បូក b ចឹងបន្ទាត់របស់យើងអានឹងសម្រាប់ linear regression របស់យើងវាស្រួលពេកចឹងដល់ពេលវាស្រួលពេកចឹងខ្ញុំអត់ប្រើចឹងទេចឹង our case in this per kind of period we will use some basic because I'm not skillful in machine learning algorithms so I just use some basic machine learning algorithm to form up the model to represent some dynamic system សំណួរសួរថាខ្ញុំត្រូវបរៀន machine learning algorithm គ្នាយើងទៀតអត់អត់ទេអ្នកនរគ្នាត្រូវរៀននៅក្នុងម៉ោង AI ចឹងខ្ញុំសួរអ្នកនរគ្នាវិញថា AI អ្នកនរគ្នារៀនចប់ហើយនៅចាប់ដើមរៀន AI នៅ
AI តថ្ងៃមួយ
ចឹងសំណួរសួរថាតើធ្វើម៉េចខ្ញុំធ្វើ TP បានទៅអូខេចឹងនៅក្នុងថ្នាក់ in my class I will have a short introduction just only like a first or second TP the third TP because I cannot do like this all the time if I do this all the time it means that I'm teaching AI class machine learning algorithm too I'm not skillful too I just only like okay make you understand how can I construct the model to represent because in our course is named modeling and simulation it means that how can we make a model of one thing on one systems and make a simulate it so for the first phase we try to make a model for one dynamic system and then the technique and then we try to simulate the result but in order to make it you have to understand some concept of machine learning algorithms so okay the second TP I will make a guideline I'm not skillful I just capture from internet too for the lessons so I will introduce you some point to make you understand the concept of those kind of machine learning algorithms and then we will work together how is it so to sum up សម្រាប់មេរៀនថ្ងៃនេះ to conclude our lesson for today just only lesson not finished yet our lesson for today we talk about dynamic system so to construct with our dynamic system you can combine with one function and the element inside those function you have the state space or you can paste space over time you have the time, you have the control function. Those case is, I can say that it's not must, it should have, and you have the set of parameter beta. So you have X is a state space, or if you have only one, you have kind of state. If you have many, you can state over time. You have time, you have the control action, and you have the number of parameter to construct one system. Normally, when you try to build one model or build one system, you have to have measuring functions. So in this case, I just put m equal to j of x. So how can I construct the measuring function? It depends on what is the type of your system, what is the goal. So for example, if I use like cryptography and I would like to make evaluation with key sensitivity in my system, so I just use the formula of the key system. And in the other thing, about the motion of the system, we can produce two different motion of system. Is kind of transcends. It means that the motion of system can place from one thing to the last until the equilibrium. Equilibrium is mean that the state have no movement. So those kind of dropping, you call is kind of tension motions, but it repeat pattern. For example, the movement of the earth around the sun, you repeat the pattern. The movement of signal, you sine cosine of x or cosine of x. So it repeat the pattern as a periodic signal. So also the called the periodic motions. And the question come up with this question: why you still use dynamic theory or dynamic to make a challenge? So they have a lot of challenge. Is why it's difficult, because we do not know f can be construct. It's kind of system that you can ignore bias or not. It's a system. When you have the bias, how can you do? When you have a multi-cost scale in one kind of environment, you have one representation. In the other environment, you have the other representations, multi-cost scale. And when the data use a high dimensional data, it would be difficult to construct to represent. For example, in like X and Y, you have only two-dimensional, so it's easy to represent this by vector, two-dimensional vector. But it's, for example, I have 10-dimensional. What kind of vector that can represent this one? It's 10 vector, x, y, y, z until 10. No, it's really difficult to construct. Human can steal it. It's 10 can steal it. So all of kind of thing is a challenge in the dynamic system. So why we still use it? Because those kind of the challenge we still conduct in some tasks difficult. For example, design optimization, you make a prediction, you make optimization in the real time. You have to interpret one system to make a human to understand what it is. So those kind of things is the kind of the use of our dynamic system model. So to solve the problem, to achieve the use of our model, what we use, they have many ways. You can represent by mathematical operator, physics modeling operator, chemical substance operator. You can write some algorithm to represent it. But in the common way of education or research, we have a common literature by using machine learning algorithm to build a model. So some cases use SWOT support vector machine. You use rule association rule. You use machine learning regression, linear non-linear regression. You use neural network. You use genetic programming. They have many ways to construct the model. So those kind of things that we will learn to construct the model in our course. This is a summarization in our class today. So at the last, I will ask you that, do you have any questions or concerns so far that you cannot understand my explanations? So the second lesson, the first lesson of the dynamic system is we would like you to understand about what is dynamic system, why we use it, and to solve the problem of the dynamic system, what will we use. So in theory part, you know already. Dynamic system, you have some property, you have some motion, you have some state, you have some parameter. Why we still dynamic system? We have a challenge as below, and what will it use for? We use some factors like prediction, like some optimization tasks, design tasks, or interpret some system to make understanding for the humans. So this is the use of the model in dynamic system. So how can you solve the problems, or how can you represent the task? So in the common way of the research, now we use kind of like in our information technology sector, IT sector, we use kind of machine learning algorithm, genetic programming. So this is the kind of solution that we try to use to build a model. So our course today, we have only this. I ask you, do you have any questions about this theory part? Okay, everyone keep silent, so it means that I assume that everyone understand all. So we will have a pause about 15 minutes. We will come back in 2:50. Okay, see you in TP class.
បាទលោកគ្រូ
យើងសម្រាប់5-10នាទីមុនយើងចូល TP អញ្ចឹង TP របស់យើងក៏វាអត់មាន TP សុទ្ធដែរ TP របស់យើងគឺខ្ញុំត្រូវ introduct theory មកសន្ទុះធំសិនទើបយើងនឹងអាចធ្វើវាបានសម្រាប់ TP ថ្ងៃហ្នឹងយើងប្រើមានយើងប្រើខ្ញុំ simulate ប្រើ Python programming ហើយសំណួរ TP ហ្នឹងខ្ញុំ create ខ្លួនឯងខ្ញុំក៏អត់ create ដែរព្រោះ I don't want to reinvent the wheel. It means that ខ្ញុំអត់ត្រូវការធ្វើសារថ្មីទេព្រោះខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យអ្នកនរ build model something. So build model something, I just use exist library and dataset to let you see how can I build the library.
លោកគ្រូ model ទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងតតែយើងមាន data គ្រប់ទើបអាច build model នឹងបានមែនលោកគ្រូ
Okay, those kind of thing I will explain you in our TP session because something we have to have data to make something, but some mathematical formula you don't have data to train it at all. For example, in my field of research during my master, I use digital filter. So our digital filter, you just use a transform function mathematical formula in second order to produce the filter function, IIR filter and FIR filter. So IIR filter and FIR filter, you just only have like parameter to estimate or to calculate, and then you have the specific mathematical formula. I do not need the data to train. I just need the data to test that my mathematical formula will work or not. It depends on how you use. But if you use in machine learning algorithm, the concept of machine learning algorithm model building is use a kind of training data, training model, and after that you test it, your model. So you have to have the data. យល់
បាទលោកគ្រូ
ចឹងចំប្រាប់គ្នាយើងថាចេះជាធម្មតារបៀប construct model ហ្នឹងប្រសិនបើករណីយើងប្រើ specific term ឧទាហរណ៍នៅក្នុង master research របស់ខ្ញុំអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំប្រើ IIR filter និង FIR filter final input response and infinite input response ហ្នឹងជាធម្មតាខ្ញុំប្រើតែ second order IIR filter ទេហើយប្រើក្នុង transform function represent with by mathematical formula អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំអត់ត្រូវការ train អីទេខ្ញុំយក input data image encryption ឬក៏ text encryption ឬក៏ audio encryption ឬក៏ video encryption ហ្នឹងមក input នៅក្នុង formula system ហ្នឹងទៅវា produce ciphertext ហើយអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគឺយើងអត់ត្រូវការ training អីទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែសម្រាប់machine learning algorithm we have to train it, we have to make it as our system model by using existing some data to train to make a model. Chỉ thầm đã initial model bảo dân vi adverb proper. Chẳng we have to initial it, train it. Rồi hốt đó vì tụi bạn result muối để dân anh tụi cho bạn. You make it until you reach the one acceptable result. So after that you get those model to apply in the real world. So this is the way that we can produce our result. Wait a bit. I will upload the TP. Khi dương TP nếu như mà bạn upload ở khi dương muốn được sao ta nhóm complete việc properly chẳng nhóm có bạn upload ở khi dương tới dương chăm thích em sống download dẫn. Okay. Nó không TP bỏ dương nó không ní work bảo vi đời xa trẻ bờ mong là mình chỉ mong online nhưng mà thơ chẳng nghề vấn đề sao tại vì chỉ mong online chẳng nhưng trong cho cái nhóm đó vừa chẳng đã cứ nhóm đó simulate càng nghe khi dương mơ thưa mà xa sân tập khi dương thưa tam cõi hay bắt đầu mà tiết tập dương chỗ đó là assignment để on hiện upload chẳng nhóm đó repeat càng nghe bỏ nhóm thu thám. If it happen inside class, I just try to explain you the concept, the way it works, and then I will let all of you do by yourself. น้องคนนี้ขึ้นแต่ไปยังสั้นอ่อน
เคยលោកគ្រូឃើញ
okay តែពេលហ្នឹងវាមិនមែន actually the real តែពេលតែម្ដងទេគឺអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាត្រូវ understand concept of neural network សិនអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំក៏មិនខ្ញុំចេះទាំងអស់ហើយក៏ខ្ញុំក៏ដាក់គេថា basic concept sorry ខ្ញុំបើកក្នុងកុំព្យូទ័រមួយទៀតអញ្ចឹងវាខ្ញុំចូល account 2ពោះកុំព្យូទ័រដែលខ្ញុំកំពុងប្រើឥឡូវខ្ញុំប្រើ touch screen surface ហ្នឹងវាអត់មានផាញ់ថិនផាញ់ឆាមដែលខ្ញុំអាច run install program បានទេអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំ share អាហ្នឹងនៅក្នុង contact មួយទៀតអញ្ចឹងអ្នកគ្នាឮ voice អីច្បាស់ធម្មតាហ៎
លឺលោកគ្រូច្បាស់
ព្រោះខ្ញុំប្រើពីកុំព្យូទ័រខ្ញុំខ្លាចវា interference មួយគ្នាមាន bias ជាមួយគ្នាអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំ use one computer for speaking it means that to include the noise and the other ones I will use to show the screen why that user don't have the right to present make up as presenter okay everyone can you see me can you hear clear me so okay ឥឡូវយើងសម្រាប់ឯណានឹង just a pause around 10 minutes more and ឥឡូវយើងអាចនិយាយលេងគ្នាបានអញ្ចឹងនៅក្នុងករណីសិក្សារបស់យើងថ្ងៃហ្នឹងជាធម្មតាមេរៀនរបស់យើង focus ទៅលើ theory definition of it because it's a concept ដែលយើងអាចនឹងប្រើប្រាស់នៅពេលដែលយើងទៅត master ឬក៏ higher education ឬក៏ធ្វើការនៅក្នុងក្រុមហ៊ុនមួយចំនួនដែលទាក់ទងជាមួយនឹង innovations not developments អញ្ចឹងឧទាហរណ៍នៅក្នុងនឹងយើងព្យាយាម build model ឧទាហរណ៍អង្គចូលក្នុងក្រសួងអូតូធនធានទឹកនិងអូតូនិយមអញ្ចឹងអង្គត្រូវ build system មួយដើម្បី predict weather broadcast ខ្ញុំមាន concept មួយចង់ប្រាប់អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាសំណួរសួរថាយើងត្រូវការប្រើ dynamic system ឬក៏ static one ប្រសិនបើខ្ញុំមាន input as static យើង predict as static Procent បើករណី static can produce like a 100 accurate output សំណួរសួរថាយើងត្រូវការ dynamic អត់យក dynamic មកធ្វើអីបើអា static វាស្រួលហើយវាទទួលបាន accurate ខ្ពស់ហើយអញ្ចឹងសំណួរសួរថា dynamic and static អាមួយណាល្អជាង it depend on how much result យើង satisfy with យើង satisfy អាមួយណាជាងអាមួយនឹងល្អជាងហើយចឹងកុំអ្នកខ្លះនិយាយថាអូ dynamic ល្អមែនទេ it depend on what is the result that the system produce some static system can produce for example ខ្ញុំដាក់គោចេញគោដាក់ក្បីចេញក្បីចឹងបើសិនករណីលទ្ធផលវាល្អគឺខ្ញុំប្រើ static ហ្នឹងកុំតែបើសិនករណីខ្ញុំប្រើ dynamic training it accurate វាអត់បាន 100% ទេអញ្ចឹងវាបានល្អដែរក៏តែគាត់ថាវាអត់ 100% អញ្ចឹងបើសិនបើករណី static វាអត់ work អញ្ចឹងយើងប្រើ dynamic ទៅនៅពេលដែល static វា work properly ហើយ dynamic មិនបាច់ប្រើទេអញ្ចឹង concept ថ្នាក់របស់យើងថ្ងៃហ្នឹងក៏ខ្ញុំចង់ focus នៅត្រង់ចំណុចហ្នឹងដែរអញ្ចឹង file lesson ឲ្យមាន2 file file ទី1គឺ file TP ក្នុង TP 2ហ្នឹងលំហាត់របស់យើងតានោះបន្តិចចុងក្រោយបានច្រាប់ទេគឺយើងនឹងធ្វើ simulation ទៅលើ image classification មួយខ្ញុំគិតថាគ្នាយើងណាដែលធ្វើការមួយលោកគ្រូដូណាប្រហែលជាអាចនឹងធ្វើតែពេលមួយនឹងហើយសម្រាប់ student that work with teacher ដូណា perhaps you have done it អ្នកនេះបានស្គាល់ទិន្នន័យមួយនឹងអត់មើល the last page of the TP ចូលបាន simulation វាអត់Hello
ដូចដូចធ្លាប់
ចឹងយើងធ្លាប់ប្រហែលជាយើងស្រួលហើយព្រោះអានឹងរបស់មានស្រាប់លើអ៊ីនធឺណិតទេយើង search ឲ្យវាទៅវាមានទាំងកូដមានអីទាំងអស់មកស្រាប់ក៏ប៉ុន្តែអ្នកនរគ្នាត្រូវ install library មួយចំនួនអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើង run code ទៅច្បាស់ជាមាន error មួយចំនួនបើសិនបើ Python របស់យើងអត់មាន library បើអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាប្រើ Linux អានឹងស្រួលទេទៅឡើង library install យកដោយសារតែ Python របស់ខ្ញុំនៅក្នុងនេះខ្ញុំប្រើ IDE ជា Python Charm អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំត្រូវ install library នៅក្នុងហ្នឹងអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំនឹងសូអាប់របៀប install library អញ្ចឹងសាំតិចអ្នកនរគ្នាកុំថាលោកគ្រូអញ្ញាយម្ដងប្រើ Python ម្ដងប្រើ MATLAB ម្ដងប្រើ programming អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំធ្វើអីមធ្យោបាយអីងាយស្រួលដែលធ្វើឲ្យ data នឹង work ស្រួលខ្ញុំប្រើមធ្យោបាយហ្នឹងគ្នាយើងចង់ build ខ្លួនឯងក៏បានដែរមើលតែ concept code វាដើមមិនទៅបានដែរអញ្ចឹងអា build model មួយនេះខ្ញុំ model របស់គេស្រាប់ទេខ្ញុំអត់ build ខ្លួនឯងទេព្រោះ build ខ្លួនឯងក៏ចំណាយពេលយូរហើយក៏ខ្ញុំអត់ជា skillful ដែរយើងសម្រាប់4នាទីទៀតឆ្នាំមុនអាមេរៀនទី2 dynamic system ខ្ញុំបរៀនពួកសិស្សច្បងយើងនឹងខ្ញុំគ្រាន់តែឲ្យ equation មួយហើយឲ្យគាត់ prove ថានឹងជាប្រភេទ linear ឬក៏ non linear ហើយសួរគាត់ថា property របស់ dynamic system មានស្អីគេខ្លះឲ្យគាត់រក mathematics formula មួយណាដែលអាច represent system បានមួយតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងឯងអត់គ្មានមកអញ្ញាយប្រើ machine learning algorithm កែកាដូចឥឡូវឯងព្រោះឥឡូវខ្ញុំបរៀន online អញ្ចឹងខុសរបស់ខ្ញុំត្រូវ a little bit standard so it difficult for me to construct new thing ខ្ញុំដឹងថាខុសហ្នឹងវាគ្រាន់តែជា basic មួយដែលឲ្យអ្នកគ្នាយើង understand ទៅតងជាមួយនឹងស្អីគេ model something ធ្វើមិនអាច model វាបានហើយ useful ក្នុងវិស័យ IT របស់យើងមានស្អីគេខ្លះអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំបរៀន online អញ្ចឹងវីដេអូនឹង can be spread in public so at least I have to conduct something in official way or the other way that generalization ទូទៅ so concept វានៅដដែលទេក៏តែគាត់ថា at least យើង understand something គេយើងថ្ងៃសៅរ៍រៀនតែម៉ោងខ្ញុំមួយទៅ
រៀនតែម៉ោងលោកគ្រូមួយ
ពួកខុសរបស់ខ្ញុំវា6ម៉ោងបាត់ហើយជាធម្មតាចេះម៉ោងរបស់យើងវា6ម៉ោងក៏ប៉ុន្តែយើងរៀន exactly តែ4ម៉ោងប៉ុន្តែដូចប្រាប់ចឹងអារបៀបពិតមែនទែនមេរៀនអនឡាញគេមិនអាចរៀនរហូតដល់2ម៉ោងទេខ្ញុំអាចបរៀនបានត្រឹមតែ45ទៅគេថា1ម៉ោងតិចតួចទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែថ្ងៃហ្នឹងនៅតែនិយាយច្រើនទៅដែរមេរៀនរបស់យើងតែ8 10 slide ប៉ុន្តែនៅតែនិយាយច្រើនអត់ស្គឹមតែគ្នាយើងយល់ទៀតពេលខ្លះប៉ុន្តែ at least ខ្ញុំបាន summarize ការងារប៉ុណ្ណឹងអញ្ចឹងអ្នកខ្លះមើលអត់ទាន់យល់ទៅមើលព្រោះវាជាប្រភេទ theory ទេវាមិនទាន់ដល់ practical ដោយអាការងារធ្វើ TP គ្នាយើង check TP មើលយល់អត់ចឹងអាមេរៀនហ្នឹងយើងនឹងរៀនភាសាទៀតនៅម៉ោង AI ហើយចឹងមិនបាច់ភ័យទេអានេះគាត់តែជា introduction មួយឲ្យយើងយល់ក៏តែបើសិនករណី AI រៀនយឺតប្រយ័ត្នតែខ្ញុំដល់ម៉ោងប្រឡងឬក៏ខ្វីសយត់អត់ចេះធ្វើ
លោកគ្រូខ្ញុំសុំមួយលោកគ្រូ library យើងនឹងត្រូវដែល code ដែលលោកគ្រូ send មកហ្នឹងយើងប្រើ library អីគេលោកគ្រូ
means យើងមើល code ខាងលើ from something export អញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគឺប្រើ library Keras ហើយយើងមានTonsor អញ្ចឹងមានមួយទៀត TensorFlow ហ្នឹងនៅពេលដែលយើង install វាអត់ដើរក៏ប៉ុន្តែនៅក្នុង code library របស់វា function របស់វាទៅសេត្រូវការ TensorFlow ទៀតនៅក្នុង code ហ្នឹងយើងមើលទៅអត់មាន TensorFlow ទេប៉ុន្តែនៅខាងក្នុងនៅពេលវា run extract function មកអាហ្នឹងមានអញ្ចឹងដំបូងខ្ញុំអត់ទៅឡើងTensorFlow ទេនៅពេលដែលខ្ញុំ run វាទៅបានវាត្រូវការទៅខ្ញុំទៅឡើងវាអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលអូខេដល់មកអូខេអញ្ចឹងមុនចូល TP យើងកុំទាន់មើល TP យើងមើល definition សិនOkay, can you see my screen? I will zoom it out bigger.
បាទលោកគ្រូឃើញ
ខ្ញុំប្រើកុំព្យូទ័រមួយទៀតដោយសារកុំព្យូទ័រមួយនេះវាអត់មានPython code ព្រោះកុំព្យូទ័រ touch screen Surface Series ចាស់ខ្ញុំ5ឆ្នាំជាងហើយហ្នឹងវា small capacity អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំប្រើសម្រាប់ only teaching writing some specific in voice video or something. So our comment TP today we will like a basic practice to build one model using machine learning algorithm is neural network. Some you that's already known it's okay. You can like okay understand more. But some of you that do not learn it yet, actually you will learn it in course AI, artificial intelligence. You will learn about machine learning algorithms. Based on the current state, your class is not started yet. So I will introduce you some point of what is neural network, where it's come from, and some basic element inside neural network. If you ask me all the thing, no, I cannot. Okay, if I cannot answer it, I will try to find the solution for you. But it's just only common thing to make you to understand what is neural network and its property exactly inside. You will learn it later inside your AI class. So one thing about definition about neural network, where it come from. So this kind of technique, as you see in the class at the moment, genetic programming inspired by flow up the movement of the ants. So based on the ant, you can generate one algorithm you call ant algorithms. So and then you call it genetic programming. And neural network, it's also the same concept. By the observation of the humans, neural network come from the neuron of the human brains. So based on the connection of the human brains, learn up something like that, we try to represent some formula to construct the structure as a human brains to conduct things. Because human brain, you see, our human brain can calculate nearly most all the things, can observe something difficult, can calculate, compute something difficult. So they just use this kind of technique to create neural network as a representative inspired formula from the human brains. So this is like a biography of the neural network. When you talk about neural network, you have the keyword that you have to understand in. It's not all keyword, because when you try to focus on neural network, you will focus on what it sees in neural network. You have input, you have output, you have layer, you have weight, you have bias, you have hidden layer, output layer, and you have type of neural network. I do not combine it all here. I just pick up some to show you. So the keyword that we conduct today about the neural network definition, you have known already. Convolutional neural network, you will see later. Pooling paste, how to pull the data, what is the useful of pooling technique. Neuron is the formula of the weight of the data. Layer, we have like input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. Filter, either way they try to, like your friend said, you would like to fill out some data, customize some data before we put in input. We try to custom optimize our model before we input in the real system. We have the call function and optimizer. So the definitions for the pooling neuron, you will see in the next sessions. No, next session, in the next upcoming time. But I just put the definition up to function is the cost function. Cost function is like if we talk about the network traffic, packet traffic definition, you would like to find accuracy, how much traffic that is produced. For example, if you download or upload some image and you have like 90%, you can upload, you have 10% of the lost data. So a cost function is a kind of measuring function that you try to identify how good your system is. So this kind of thing is the way that you use for our neural network. Optimizer, normally the first initialization of the neural network, you cannot use it because you can use it, but first initialization is not produce a good output layer, output outcome. So you have to optimize your model by using training. So when you try to update something, you use the name as optimizer. So in the neural network, when you go deeply, you will learn about the way that can you update bias, the way that can update the weight. So they have used back forward function, you have forward function. So those kind of things you will learn later inside the class. But in this case, you just know the definition, what is optimizer. and the purpose. So the process of neural network, you have the first input into the functions. So one layer, you have like a one functions. And when you try to produce the output from one function, if you have many layers, the first output of the first layer will become the input from the next layer by multiplying with the weight. So the weight is a kind of a coefficient or the constant that have to define in your system. So how can we ensure it? First of all, you initial the weight. After that, in order to make our system make proper output and also produce like a better model, you have to update the weight. So update or not update, it depends on you. But in order to produce normally, in common way, when you try to train the data to make a model, you have to update the weight in neural network to make sure that our model can produce one accurate output. So the way to update, we have weight and bias. So the way to update, you have method initialization by your AI class. You can back forward or forward functions. So what is bias mean? As you see from the previous lesson slide, bias is a kind of noise, or we also call bias external force. We also call bias, but in this case, bias is a unique value. We represent by one b. Every neuron have the same bias b. Our neurons, when we try to focus for input x1, x2, x3, so our weight we have w1, w2, w3 the same, but by us we have only one b. You don't have b1, b2, b3. You have only one b. So one unique bias construct every neurons. As you see in this figure, it's a human brain neuron connection. So based on these connections, human observations, we've observed it, we produce something. You see in this case, it seems to be like automations cost, but it is like a sample representation of the neurons in neural network connections. So I have input X and I have a hidden layer X1, X2, and X3. The input into layer, and the first input we go up with the bias W1. Can you see the screen? So we have can be this one can be W1, W2. This one can be W2, W3. After that, the first input into the next functions. The next function can be some specific function, can convolute if we use a convolution. So this one will be the convolution function. If you use some multiplication, this one can be the multiplication. After that, you generate the output. So in this case, for example, if I try to produce two outputs, for example, I try to classification delicious or not delicious. For example, the qualification of delicious compared to the result, so it's less than not delicious, so output must be not delicious. So this is the way that you construct a simple neural network. But actually, do you use this kind of thing? No, we do not use this one, because this one cannot build a good model. You will see the other structure of the neural network. We call something about artificial neural network. Okay, now I try to show you about deep neural network. We have like a layer input, you have many inputs, and after that you have multiple hidden layer. So if you have much more, we call deep neural network. And if you have only one hidden layer, you will see that it's a kind of the consequential neural network. So our hidden layer, we also have a lot of input, and then the output we have only 3. For example, if we make a classification threshold, because we work with input with the number. For example, if it's hot, the value from 0 to 1, 0 to 3. If the value is normal, it's 3 to 5, and more than 5, it's abnormal. So is this the output layer from our system? And then based on the output, we can classify it into specific classification method as we want. So this is the concept by using neural network architecture. So most common way that we use neural network is about the classifications. So if you ask me that, teacher, can we use only classification technique? No, you can apply it in any method, such as your senior, my junior, but your senior. He used artificial neural network to produce as crypto engine, encryption and decryptions. So he just used a neural network. The concept is the same. So there are three methods of learning, not just only neural network. In general, in machine learning algorithms, they have three methods of learning. One we call supervised, unsupervised, and reinforced learning. So what does it mean? Supervised mean. For the supervised mean, when you try to build the model of your system, you already have the desired output. What does it mean in this case? I will explain you in Khmer. នៅពេលដែលគ្នាយើងមាន input អ្នកគ្នាមាន output already អ្នកគ្នាមានន័យថាយើង expect output ដែលយើងគួរតែមានវាហើយសំណួរសួរថាអា model កណ្ដាលយើងគួរតែ build មិនដើម្បីបាន output ប៉ុណ្ណឹងអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគេហៅថាប្រភេទ supervised algorithm or supervised learning. For example នៅពេលដែលអ្នកគ្នាប្រើទឹកខ្មេះ 5% ប្រើទឹកត្រី 5% ប្រើស្ករ1គីឡូប៊ីចេងកន្លះគីឡូអំបិលប៉ុណ្ណេះអញ្ចឹងអ្នកគ្នាមាន output ហើយអ្នកគ្នានឹងបង្កើតអីមួយបានរបស់ប៉ុណ្ណេះក៏ប៉ុន្តែសំណួរសួរថាអា model កណ្ដាលអ្នកគ្នាដែល process data ហ្នឹង build មិនអញ្ចឹងដើម្បី build វាបានអ្នកគ្នាទៅប្រើអាទិន្នន័យទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងយកមក build អញ្ចឹងវាមាន training data អញ្ចឹងអារបៀបនៃការ build model by the learning from existing data ដែលមាន desired output already ហ្នឹងគេហៅថា supervised learning អញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគេហៅថា supervised learning ចំពោះ unsupervised learning, what does it mean? So for unsupervised learning, we do not have the desired output. We don't have it. We build a model by using the data the same, but you do not have the desired output, but you have the control conditions or the stop condition. For example, I use association rule to study to predict the human behavior for the upcoming event. For example, if I am the owner of the supermarket and I would like to sell the product for next upcoming Khmer New Year, so what is the combination of products should I use? What is the preparation of the product should I prepare? For example, I should prepare food nearby vegetable. I should prepare the drink nearby soft drink, nearby glass, nearby eye, for example. So how can you know that you have to prepare like that? And if I would like to buy as a set, what is the element that I should put in the set? You do not have the desired output yet, but you have the stop condition. For example, I have to learn the association rule between the relationship between attribute. If focus on the market bracket or the product, you would like to learn about the relation between from one product to the other product based on the data that from the previous client. For example, every new year I would like to increase selling, so I learn from the previous year. Okay, what is the customer usually buy from the previous year, and we learn about that capture. We will update to facilitate them for more concept. For example, make a set of product, prepare it in the best design. Okay, put nearby item that relate to each other. So those kind of learning, you have called it a kind of unsupervised learning. And the other one is reinforced learning. Reinforcement learning, I'm not really clarify with the definition of reinforced learning, but just only give you the concept of reinforced learning. when you try to learn some action, you will give a revert to one action or one event when it makes something correctly. For example, I create a botnet. Botnet is a kind of system that try to attract the attacker. And then when attacker to attack that botnet system, our system will be able to learn the behavior of attacking. So in this case, when it can learn one command, we give the rewards to this function. So the technique, the process that we build, we call reinforced learning. ចឹងករណីហ្នឹងគឺតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងការធ្វើ function មួយដែលឲ្យធ្វើ revert function ខ្ញុំឧទាហរណ៍នៅពេលខ្ញុំ build botnet មានការ system network មួយគេថា visual network មួយដែល build ឲ្យដើម្បី attract ទៅពួកអ្នកវាយប្រហារឬពួក attacker ឲ្យមកវាយប្រហារ system របស់យើងនៅពេលដែលពួកគាត់វាយប្រហារ system របស់យើងនឹង capture ទៅលើ technique របស់ពួកគាត់ថាគាត់វាយប្រហារមិននៅពេលដែលយើង capture technique របស់ពួកគាត់បានហើយយើង learn ពី technique របស់ពួកគាត់នឹងយកអា technique ហ្នឹងបង្កើតជា prevention action ណាមួយដើម្បីការពារ system របស់យើងក្នុង real system របស់យើងអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងគេហៅថា reinforced learning អូខេ based on neural network យើងចូលទៅដល់ប្រភេទមួយរបស់ neural network គឺជា convolutional neural network សំណួរសួរថាវាមានតែ convolutional អត់មែនទេវាមានប្រភេទ consequential convolutional attributional neural network random forest you have deep learning extreme learning you have a lot of kind of neural network extension or innovative of neural network but I pick up only convolutional neural network to explain to you so the definition about the convolutional neural network is CNN. So CNN is a variant of linear neural network. It's a kind of the step of the you can say convolution is about summations. It's the same something of summations. So when you try to form up with the neural network, for example, you have in output y, input x. So y equal to bias plus w1 x1 plus w2 x2 plus w3 x3 plus point until wn xn. So it's a term of the convolutional. Convolutional it means that summations. So it's a common way that they use convolutional neural network is in image processing. And then when we try to make in this data, before we make input of data, we try to, as our friend said, that we try to filter the data, we try to reduce noise, we try to normalize data. So in our process, we call pooling technique. Pooling technique is the way that we try to reduce the high dimensional data to be the easy one to access and to formulate. So in our case, នៅពេលដែលយើងចង់ transform data របស់យើងពី big size data ទៅជា small size data មួយអញ្ចឹងនៅក្នុង case មួយហ្នឹងគឺ easy បំផុតយើងប្រើ technique មួយគឺ pooling technique អញ្ចឹង pooling technique របស់យើង our pooling technique we have two way one is maximum pooling technique and the other one is about the average value or kernel of pooling technique យើងមានពីរគឺយើងមាន maximum max pooling technique and the other one is average pooling technique. So what is the useful? The way of useful of pooling technique is we try to reduce our dimensional of data to one easy form to access by keeping the important feature of the data. អញ្ចឹងគោលបំណងរបស់វាគឺយើង reduce data របស់យើងពី big size ឬក៏ទំហំមួយដែលវាធំពេកក្នុងការ access ហ្នឹងទៅជា easy form មួយដែលយើងងាយ easy to access ប៉ុន្តែអា feature ឬក៏ value ដែលវា important ដើម្បីចូលរួមក្នុងការ evaluate system ហ្នឹងគឺវានៅដដែលឧទាហរណ៍ប្រសិនបើយើងមាន matrix របស់យើងជាប្រភេទ 4x4 matrix អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំចង់ធ្វើ pooling data ប៉ុណ្នេះទៅជាប្រភេទ 2 multiplied by 2 matrix សំណួរសួរធ្វើមិនអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំ divide អានឹងគឺជា for block អញ្ចឹងមួយ block មួយ for block cover one value អញ្ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះខ្ញុំប្រើ map pooling អញ្ចឹងដូចគ្នាយើងអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំពេលខ្ញុំ sorry អ ខ្ញុំគូយូរពេកខ្ញុំស្ពុកជើង Okay, sorry សុំ5នាទី I asked you for 5 minutes ស្ពឹកជើង សុំ5នាទីគ្នាយើងអង្គុយសង្កត់យូរពេកស្ពឹកជើងអស់ឈឺ Okay, we can continue. As you see in this picture, when I try to divide from the original, if 4 multiplied by 4 matrix in value, and then I use just only 2 by multiplied by 2 pooling technique. So if you use a maximum pooling technique, so as you see that we will pick up the max value among selection matrix to put only one value. For example, the first matrix 2 by 2, you have 12, 20, 80, and 12. So the maximum value is 20. So we select the value of 20. What does it mean? Related to concern of pooling technique, why we can use this in image processing. As you see, when you use in image, the neighbor pixel or the neighbor intensity value of the image is the correlated color. So when you try to learn it, if you learn every point of the color, if it's a high dimensional data, it's a big data, so you will spend much time, high complexity of system to learn about it. If you just only pick up one intensity that can represent all intensity, so it will easy for you to understand and make a performance in your system. The same case in this case, because all the pixel of the color is related to pixel or correlated intensity. So when you use a maximum pooling, you see, you pick up only maximum, so we will get the result like this. But if you use average pooling, it means that you will find the average among those values of the selected matrix. For example, 12, 20, 8, and 12. So the average of this, you have to make summation and then divide the number of the matrix that we select. For example, this one you use 2 multiplied by 2, so you make a summation and divide by 4. So you will get certain value. This is a kind of the average pooling technique. So when you use, like say, in the common way, pooling technique is used to normalize the data into the easy form, one that you can access easily, also increase the performance. So this is the pooling technique. Okay, this is all about the theory about the neural network. So do you have any question about neural network? Hello យល់តើអីគ្នាយើង
យល់គ្រូ
I hope so for some of you that you have learned some course outside already. You have learned, but some people that never try to find the other additional course outside, so perhaps you don't understand about this clearly. But I just would like to show you the concept of neural network, where it's come from, and what is the functional inside that we can use. So as you see that to build one model, you try to learn different ways. One way is to supervise, and the other way is unsupervised, and that one is about reinforce. In this case, I just focus on supervised one. And if you have the big data, so do you have to learn all the data as input? The answer say no. You have to normalize it. So to normalize, to transform data from the high dimensional to the easy access form or the common one by keeping the same important feature of the data. We use kernel pooling. We have technique one have the maximum pooling, and the other one is average pooling. If you ask me which one is better, it depends on the data. So if you ask me that, okay, which one should be select, you can make if-else conditions to simulate which one can produce the best accurate. You can select that one by make a simulation for both two. So this is a concept that I would like to show you for our TP class today. So after the result
លោកគ្រូសុំសួរមួយ
បាទ
កន្លែង matrix មិញចុះឧទាហរណ៍បើសិនជា5គុណ4អញ្ចឹងយើងយកមិនទៅលោកគ្រូ
Okay, this is a good question. So normally when we try to work with the matrix of data, and our matrix is not like a square matrix. For example, if 4 multiplied by 4 is kind of square matrix, right? So teacher, how can I make something by using like technique ones? For example, if you ask me, I have 5 multiplied by 4, how can I do it? So you can make adjustment to the data, add more data. For example, I add 0, 0. After that, after the selection, I will get some. For example, if you add 0, 0, it means that you are add something. For example, if I add 0, 0, if you use select the mark pooling, it will be okay because your intensity value do not lose because you just pick up only the exact data that from the data. But if you use average pooling, you cannot add 0, 0. Why? ទៅពេលដែលយើង add 0, 0 ត្រង់ចំណុចហ្នឹងវានឹងធ្វើឲ្យ data របស់យើង reduce អញ្ចឹងវាធ្វើឲ្យ data របស់យើង change អញ្ចឹងនៅពេល data change វានឹងធ្វើឲ្យយើងអាចគេថាលុបបំបាត់នៅ feature important មួយចំនួននៅក្នុង data ធ្វើឲ្យ data របស់យើង learn ទៅគឺខុសអញ្ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះខ្ញុំចង់ប្រាប់គ្នាយើងថានៅពេលដែល matrix របស់យើងអត់មានជាប្រភេទ square matrix អញ្ចឹងវា a little bit difficult to define អញ្ចឹងរបៀបមិន common way ណាគឺជារបៀបទូទៅក្នុងការខ្ញុំគេថា personal ឬក៏អាចនិយាយថា common way ដែលទូទៅសម្រាប់អ្នក researcher គេធ្វើថាតើគេធ្វើម៉េចនៅពេលដែលមាន matrix ដែលវាអត់ត្រូវតាម form អញ្ចឹងអ្នកនរអាច adjust វាបានរបៀប adjust មិនប្រសិនបើអ្នកនរប្រើ mark pooling យើង adjust pixel របស់យើងថា 0 0 ទៅវាអត់ប៉ះពាល់ទេឲ្យវាคล้ายជាទៅជាប្រភេទ square matrix ប្រសិនបើអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នា adjust ហើយប្រើ technique របស់យើងជាប្រភេទ average pooling អញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលអ្នក adjust row value you have to pick up the same value of its neighbor row. For example, if I adjust xi plus 1, so I have to put xi plus 1 equal to xi. យល់ខ្ញុំនិយាយត្រង់ចំណុចហ្នឹងអត់គឺយើង adjust matrix របស់យើងប្រសិនបើយើងឧទាហរណ៍ត្រង់ចំណុចលេខ4ប្រសិនបើនេះ deal យើងទៅបន្ថែមមុខលេខ4មក value ទៀតតើយើងគួរដាក់លេខប៉ុណ្ណាចំណុចត្រង់ចំណុចហ្នឹងគឺខ្ញុំអាច add បន្ថែមរបស់វាឲ្យដូចអាទីតាំងលេខ4ក៏បានដូចអាទីតាំងខាងលើក៏បាននិយាយរួម like its neighbor ប្រសិនបើ neighbor វាមានប៉ុណ្ណាឧទាហរណ៍បើ neighbor វាមាន3អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាអាចយក average របស់ neighbor ពួកហ្នឹង technique វាអាចមានគេថាខុសគ្នាចឹងឬក៏អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាអាច select maximum របស់ neighbor របស់វាតោះម្ចាស់សំណួរយល់ទេ
អត់ទាន់ច្បាស់មកលោកគ្រូ
អូខេម្ដងទៀតប្រសិនបើ matrix របស់យើងជាប្រភេទ data ដែលវាអត់ standard ជាប្រភេទ square matrix ទេអញ្ចឹងអារបៀបយើងធ្វើ kernel pooling ហ្នឹងគឺវាពិបាកដោយសារអីនៅពេលដែលយើងបែងចែក data ទៅវាអត់បាន square អញ្ចឹងវាពិបាកក្នុងការសិក្សានៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះ suggestion របស់យើងគឺ adjust មានន័យថាម៉េចគឺធ្វើម៉េច transform matrix របស់យើងទៅជាប្រភេទ square matrix đôi khi dương prap mình chẳng pram cún nâng pram chiếc square matrix ớt we square matrix but nó bây giờ dy bảo vệ tới vì mình form bảo vệคือแบบ chẳng nó trong cho nó ní nhóm nâng convert bảo vệ tới chỉประเภท6 គុណ 6 មូលហេតុអីជ្រើសរើស 6 គុណ 6 មិនយក 5 គុណ 5 នៅពេលយើងយក 5 គុណ 5 ពេលបែកទៅវាមិន deal ដដែលអញ្ចឹងវាអត់បាន square matrix ទេអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំយក 6 គុណ 6 យើងបែកបាន square matrix របស់យើងជា 2 2 ទៅវាបាន 3 គុណ 3 3 គុណ 3 អញ្ចឹងយើងត្រូវ adjust បន្ថែម adjust បន្ថែមមិនគឺឧទាហរណ៍ adjust position មួយនេះ position មួយនេះសំណួរសួរថាតើតម្លៃប៉ុណ្ណាដែលយើងនឹង adjust វាមាន two way the same ទី1យើង pick up យក average neighbor របស់វាឧទាហរណ៍នៅពេលដែលខ្ញុំ add អានេះ neighbor របស់វាមានប៉ុន្មានអញ្ចឹងសំណួរ
0មែនលោក
ចំនួន neighbor
អូចំនួន neighbor បាទអាហ្នឹងមានតែ2
មិនតែ2មានតែ1សោះហ្នឹងមានតែនេះមួយហ្នឹងហើយមានត្រូវមាន2
ខ្ញុំស្មានតែនេះមួយទៀតចាឃើញវាជន់ដែរលោកគ្រូ
ណា
អូ
មាន neighbor មានន័យថា interface cell interface square របស់វាជាប់គ្នាអូខេ
មានថាជាប់ទៅលើក្រមហើយស្ដាំឆ្វេងមែនលោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹងវាជាប់លើក្រមឆ្វេងស្ដាំ4ជាប់អញ្ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះខ្ញុំអាចចាស់ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះឧទាហរណ៍ technique របស់យើងយក maximum យើងប្រើ maximum ណាអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលយើង select neighbor នេះយើងថា neighbor ណាជាប់ខ្លះលេខ0អញ្ចឹងយើង pick up value របស់វាមានតែ1យកច្បាច់ទៅណាថែមលេខ0ហ្នឹងមិនអញ្ចឹងណានឹង adjust ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះមាន neighbor ប៉ុន្មាន
1ណែលោកគ្រូ
អត់ទេ2ហើយព្រោះឥឡូវអានេះយើង unadjust ហើយអញ្ចឹង add អានេះថ្មីអានេះមានតម្លៃនៅ
អូបាទលោកគ្រូយក
អញ្ចឹង neighbor របស់វាចាប់បានមានប៉ុន្មានហើយ
មាន2
អញ្ចឹងបើសិនកាលណាយើងប្រើ maximum technique គឺយើង select យកអា2នេះអាមួយណាធំជាងយើងយកអាហ្នឹងប៉ុន្តែបើសិនកាលណាយើងយក average technique យើងយកអានេះបូកចូលគ្នាគឺចែកនឹងចំនួន neighbor
បាទលោកគ្រូបាទយល់ទេលោកគ្រូ
understand
yes
something like this appear in exam previous year so ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះបើអ្នកនរគ្នាសួរថាចេះវិញលោកគ្រូពេលខ្ញុំ adjust matrix តើខ្ញុំគួរតែយក map pooling ឬក៏ average technique មកប្រើនៅ Sam you have to make a condition which one it produce a better result you select that technique okay ម្ចាស់សំណួរហើយអ្នកផ្សេងយល់ម្ចាស់សំណួរសួរអត់គ្នាយើង
លោកគ្រូយល់
អូខេ good គ្នាយើងស្ងាត់ខ្ញុំអត់ដឹងណាព្រោះអត់មាន interaction ការពិតខុសគ្នាយើងខ្ញុំត្រូវឲ្យគ្នាយើងបើកកាមេរ៉ាទាំងអស់គ្នា to make sure you learn but អូខេឥឡូវដោយសារតែខ្ញុំវាហួសហើយវាយកដល់ម៉ោងចិត្តម៉ោងចុងក្រោយអញ្ចឹងបើក៏វាអត់មានន័យដែរប៉ុន្តែចាប់ពីអាទិត្យក្រោយទៅ you should open your camera
លោកគ្រូតែ laptop ខ្ញុំ webcam អត់មានផង
use phone for camera communication and voice use computer for sharing and communications to share the screen អ្នកនរគ្នាគឺប្រើទូរស័ព្ទដើម្បី capture voice and image ខ្ញុំជឿជាក់ថាគ្រប់គ្នានៅក្នុងថ្នាក់ IT អ្នកនរគ្នាមាន smartphone បានទេទទួលបានទេ
បានលោកគ្រូសុំមួយទៀតនៅពេលដែលលោកគ្រូនិយាយថាយើងអាចបដូរ matrix ដែលយើងមិនជា standard ហ្នឹងបដូរទៅជា standard square ហ្នឹងតែដល់ពេលយើងនិយាយទៅដូចស្រួលដល់ពេលយើងធ្វើវារៀងពិបាកក្នុងការធ្វើ implement ណាលោកគ្រូ
អូខេសំណួរសួរថាតើពេលយើង implement យើងគួរធ្វើមិនអញ្ចឹងហ៎ជាធម្មតានៅពេលដែលយើង adjust matrix គេមិនដែល adjust ច្រើនឧទាហរណ៍នៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះរបៀបអាចារ្យគេសំណួរសួរថាបើយើងបែងមួយកលៈម្ដងចេះគឺអ្នកនរគ្នាធ្វើការងារពិបាកក៏ប៉ុន្តែបើសិនកាត់ខ្ញុំធ្វើជាប្រភេទគេហៅថា block by block ខ្ញុំធ្វើម្ដងមកជុំ4នេះចឹងអាម៉ាត្រីផ្សេងខ្ញុំទុកសិនទុកចោលសិនធ្វើ4នឹងសិនទេចឹងអា4នឹង convert by ខ្លាយជា4 block 4ទៀតជាធម្មតានេះគេធ្វើ block by block ធ្វើ4ទៀត4ចឹងជាធម្មតាអាការ adjust matrix របស់យើង4រហូត i របស់យើងមិនដើម i ហើយនឹង j របស់យើងមិន deduct រហូតមិនចឹងហ៎
បាទ
នឹងជាធម្មតានៅពេលដល់ maximum i and j ប្រសិនបើ matrix របស់យើងវាស្ថិតនៅក្នុង form ដែលអត់ត្រូវអញ្ចឹងយើងអាច adjust វាបានហើយ adjust របស់យើង adjust តាមប៉ុន្មានបើយើងធ្វើ4ចេះ adjust បើតែខ្វះ1 adjust តែ1ខ្វះ2បើខ្វះតាមអាក្រមមកនេះ adjust តែក្រមមួយនេះអញ្ចឹង neighbor របស់យើងក៏យើងអត់លេងគិតច្រើនដែរព្រោះយើងធ្វើការតាម block ទោះបីឧទាហរណ៍ទោះបីវាមានអា neighbor ខាងក្រមទៀតក៏ដោយក៏យើងអត់ខ្វល់ដែរដោយសារតែយើងអត់សិក្សាទៅលើវាយើងឲ្យតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងជា neighbor
បាទលោកគ្រូ
យល់ទេ
យល់
បើយើងយក data ទាំងមូលមកអាចារ្យអានឹងពិបាកប៉ុន្តែបើយើងកាត់ជា block ហើយយើងយកមកអាចារ្យអានឹងស្រួល
អានឹងតតែដោយឧទាហរណ៍យើង filter លើរូបមួយអញ្ចឹងយើងដកអា pixel ដែលយើងអត់ត្រូវការចោលហើយបង្កើតជាអាដុំនឹងឲ្យទៅ adjust បានមែនលោកគ្រូ
អូខេ one technique ដែលចង់ប្រាប់អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាអូខេខ្ញុំសូមបើក page ចាស់អានេះ code ហ្នឹងអូខេនិយាយ on លើ cloud បដ ாய் ទៅវិធីសាស្ត្រដ៏ស្រួលបំផុតគឺជាធម្មតាទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងមិន two dimensional data មិនអញ្ចឹងហ៎
បាទលោកគ្រូ
easy way convert ទៅអានឹងទៅជា one dimensional data
បាទ
ហើយបន្តមកទៀតនៅពេលដែលយើងធ្វើអា 2 multiply by 2នេះយើងកាត់វាម្ដងមកកង់ជាទៅកាត់មកកង់នៅក្នុង one dimensional ស្រួលហ៎សំណួរសួរថា two dimensional ហ្នឹងបើយើងកាត់ជា4 2 2 អញ្ចឹងតម្លៃរបស់វាមានប៉ុន្មាន pixel មានតែ4 pixel ហ្នឹងដល់ពេលយើងកាត់4 value convert ទៅជា two dimensional data 2 2 មក combine មក value add ចូលទៅក្នុង array ថ្មី combine 4 value ខ្លាចជាមួយ value add ចូល array ថ្មីហើយឃើញស្រួលហ៎
បាទ
ហើយមានអីបាក់អានេះ technique មួយបើសំណួរសួរ technique វាត្រូវរហូតអត់ត្រូវទេពេលខ្លះគេប្រើតាម array ជាប្រភេទ row អ្នកខ្លះប្រើជា column មានន័យថាគេ combine គេមាន combine រត់ជាតំណាក់នៅក្នុង loop យើងមិន loop ពី i ម្នេះមុនអញ្ចឹងហ៎តាមជួរដេកមុនហើយ continue តាមមកជួរក្រោយ continue មកជួរក្រោយអញ្ចឹងមិនអញ្ចឹងហ៎នៅពេលខ្លះគេអត់ធ្វើអញ្ចឹងទេពេលខ្លះគេធ្វើជួរ column ចុះក្រោមហើយរត់ run j ហើយបាន run i ក្រោយនៅពេលខ្លះគេ run i ចប់ហើយមកគេ run j ក្រោយយល់និយាយអត់ត្រង់ចំណុចហ្នឹង
បាទលោកគ្រូ
យល់លោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹង good ឧទាហរណ៍នៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះបើខ្ញុំ convert ទៅជាប្រភេទ row អញ្ចឹងទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងចេញមកជួរមួយ row ចេះមកប៉ុន្តែបើសិនកាលនេះខ្ញុំ convert ទៅជា column វានឹងចេញមកជួរចេះមក
បាទលោកគ្រូតែតម្លៃវាអាចខុសគ្នាលោកគ្រូពូ
ខុសអញ្ចឹងបានខ្ញុំសួរគ្នាយើងថាអាមួយណាល្អ you have to experiment it test it and then make condition which one is better we assign some data ដែរ data មួយចំនួនចេះ data មួយចំនួននៅពេលដែលយើង pick up តាម row របស់វាតាមលំដាប់ទិន្នន័យ pixel របស់វាស្តៀងគ្នាទៅវាចាប់ទៅរហូតអត់បញ្ហាទេក៏តែបើយើងចាប់តាម column វាក៏ចាប់តាម color rank របស់វាដែរអញ្ចឹងសំណួរសួរថាតើ color របស់យើងរត់ដេញបដិញគ្នាតាមជួរដេកគឺតាមជួរឈរក៏តែបើចំពោះ image ខ្ញុំចង់និយាយថាចំពោះ image row ឬ column គឺដូចគ្នាដោយសារអី one pixel of value of the image is too small and neighborhood pixel it's the correlated pixel app color ដែលនៅជុំវិញសារ color ដូចគ្នាទេទាំងអា column ឬក៏ row ហ្នឹងក៏ដូចតែគ្នាដែរនេះគឺជារបៀប polling តោះគ្នាយើងមានសំណួរឬចម្ងល់អីផ្សេងក្រៅពីហ្នឹងទេ
ចឹងលោកគ្រូសម្រាប់ max pooling ហ្នឹង work តែរបស់ដូចជា image អីចឹងឯងតែបើក្រៅពី image
matrix និយាយរួម
matrix
ទិន្នន័យអីអាច represent as matrix we will work on but the common way ឬក៏ common useful the use of model ជាតោះអា model ហ្នឹងវា useful គេប្រើសម្រាប់ image វាប្រើត្រូវច្រើនចាំមកគេថា mostly អានេះប្រើសម្រាប់ image មូលហេតុដែល image ប្រើត្រូវច្រើនដោយសារតែ one reason is image is the most high redundant intensity high redundant មានន័យថាម៉េច
ដូចជាន់គ្នា
ច្រើនឧទាហរណ៍រូបភាពនេះអ្នកនរគ្នាមើលរូបភាពនេះដូចត្រង់ចំណុចនេះចាស់អ្នកនរគ្នាឃើញ color ដូចគ្នាទេ
ឃើញលោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹង color ដូចគ្នាមានន័យថាតម្លៃរបស់វាគឺដូចគ្នាស្តៀងគ្នាច្រើនអញ្ចឹងអាការសិក្សា pixel របស់វា neighbor របស់វាគឺសឹងតែដូចគ្នាទាំងស្រុងអញ្ចឹងដល់ពេលយើងធ្វើ pooling ទៅវាអត់បាត់បង់ important feature ទេ
បានលោកគ្រូ
អូខេតោះអ្នកផ្សេងហ្នឹងអត់សួរនឹងមានន័យថាអ្នកផ្សេងយល់អស់តែit's not the same like inside physical class if inside physical class I just go walk around and let you understand and then I draw something on the whiteboard and explain you but if this is online I just only can say and then mouse scroll up scroll down to see you can understand or not so please interact with me as much as possible make sure you can understand the concept however you do not know how to implement just the next step and machine learning algorithm there are a lot of software is open source or algorithm or code that already developed so you just go and then take it to use why I say like that because why you have to reinvent the wheel while you have the wheel already you just try to understand the wheel and then use their code rewrite again it's nothing but when you try to rewrite again you will understand from the first scratch of the work
គោលកូដគេដែលផ្ដល់ឲ្យហ្នឹងភាគច្រើននៅពេលដែលយើងចង់ apply ទៅលើអីផ្សេងក្រៅពីរបស់ដែលគេធ្វើហ្នឹងវារៀងពិបាកបើយើងអត់យល់ទាំងអស់អីចឹង
because the code that you try to use is just only the main code you don't have the subcode or the function code of all of them the way that you try to pick up the code you have to pick up some code that have its library attached with ពេលយើង copy code ឬក៏យក code គេមកប្រើកុំយកអា code ណាដែលត្រូវហៅ function ឯ function ហៅមក online ណា
បាទលោកគ្រូ
ពេល function ហៅមក online អានឹងគឺអត់យល់ process ទេដោយការងារខ្ញុំកំពុងតែធ្វើឥឡូវ function របស់វា online អត់ online ទេ offline ប៉ុន្តែវានៅក្នុង IDE PyCharm វាអត់ស្ថិតនៅក្នុង project folder ចឹងសំណួរសួរថាយើងចង់ check ថាវាដើរមិនអត់ដឹងទេសំណួរសួរថាខ្ញុំត្រូវការ build ពី 0 គ្នាយើងមើលអត់ទេរសារខុសហ្នឹងមិនមែនជាខុសដែលខ្ញុំត្រូវបរៀនមែនទេបរៀនត្រឹមដល់តែបរៀនគ្នាយើងគាត់ថាចង់ឲ្យអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាយល់ថាដើម្បី build អាប៉ុណ្ណឹងបានហ្នឹងយើងត្រូវការ element ប៉ុណ្ណេះអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើងរៀន build វាមក AI ច្បាស់ជាងយើង build វាហើយយើង test ឬ simulate លើវាហើយអញ្ចឹងអាហ្នឹងយើងនឹងអាចយល់ភាសាទៀតOkay. Do you have any question more?
លោកគ្រូចង់សួរមួយទៀតអាកន្លែង matrix ហ្នឹង dương chạm vía ta cu với mẹ là cụ đó đi
No, it's square matrix. What does it mean square matrix?
square mẹ pi con pi em
No, square is mean n multiplied by n. Number of n is n anything.
chỗ đó bà sinh chia matrix thông dưỡng viêm pal con pal
Yes.
bà thấy máu dương vậy vía chia mùi nó dương chạm mình từ mà
So okay, if it's 7 by 7, so if you would like to divide to make a pooling, normally it's already square matrix, right? And
Yeah.
when you try to divide it, that is still square matrix. No, our matrix will be changed. So if it change, how can we select? You have to convert it to something that have flow. So the common way, most common way, it's not all case, but the most common way is some matrix that can reduce and then divide by 2 and divide by 3. For example, 9 multiplied by 9. When you use 3 by 3, you will reduce by 9 by 9. After that, you will get 3, 3, 3. And then you will get the other matrix 3 multiplied by 3. So it means that when you try to reuse something, the common way that they use is divide by specific number. For example, if you have 7 by 7, the way that I try to adjust, I will adjust by 2 pixels to have 9 by 9. And then the way that I try to divide the block of intensity of pixel is 3 multiplied by 3. Vô làm gì ở trongចំណុចហ្នឹង
chẳng nghe tha ưu đó bà dân miền ba con ba chứ mà của dân thời time pi râu thế pi râu mình pi làm thế này
ហ្នឹងអាចឹង
chẳng
ដល់ពេល
thời time dân time tại lại xôn tại đại mẹ là cụ tôi còn
ដល់ពេលយើងសួរថាតម្លៃ00ទៅដែរអាហ្នឹងសំណួរសួរទៅវិញថាតើ technique មួយណាយើងប្រើ neighbor average neighbor maximum
bà dân phở maximum dân thời time xôn này là cụ ta bà dân phở average
neighbor maximum គឺ neighbor តម្លៃរបស់វាអាមួយណាដែលនៅជាប់វាធំជាងគេយកអាហ្នឹងឧទាហរណ៍ខ្ញុំថែមតចំណុចនេះនេះតចំណុចនេះតើ neighbor របស់វាប៉ុន្មាន
អត់ឃើញម៉ៅផងលោកគ្រូ
នេះតចំណុចនេះ
តចំណុចហ្នឹងneighbor វា20
អូខេ value របស់វាប៉ុន្មានបើយើងប្រើ max
20
អូខេបន្តមកទៀតខ្ញុំថែមអានេះ
ហ្នឹង30
neighbor វាប៉ុន្មានខ្លះ
neighbor វាអានេះ20អានេះ30
បើយើងប្រើ max ឃើញប៉ុន្មាន
នេះ30
អូខេបើយើងប្រើ average
average យក20បូក30ចែក2
អញ្ចឹងតើ technique ទៅប៉ុណ្្នឹងតា
ចុះឧទាហរណ៍បើយើងថែមមកតង់ទៀតយើងសិក្សាយើងអាថែមហ្នឹងមែនលោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹង
ពីដែលយើងថែម
បើយើងមកមើល overview អាការថែមមកតង់អញ្ចឹងណាឃើញពិបាកអេ
ពិបាកលោកគ្រូ
បាទ
តែបើយើងប្រើកូដខ្ញុំគិតថារៀងcomplex តិចតែបើយើង
code and complex តិចអញ្ចឹងអ្វីដែលស្រួលបំផុតដូចខ្ញុំប្រាប់បញ្ញរដ្ឋអញ្ចឹង the easier way you convert this one to one dimensional data after that you cut up by the matrix that you want if you want 3 by 3 you just cut up 9 value after that convert to 3 by 3 and then use technique 9999 until the last one if the last one you have only 6 number you have only to add only 3 more so the 3 more you just pick up the same value to the neighbor យល់ខ្ញុំនិយាយអត់ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះឧទាហរណ៍ខ្ញុំយកកូដក្រមកមើលវិញចាokay I insert the value ឧទាហរណ៍ខ្ញុំមាន matrix ប៉ុណ្ណឹងចាអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលខ្ញុំចង់ធ្វើវាសំណួរ add ប៉ុណ្ណា dương từng quy côn mà trimmer hay chừng tiền ba khang lư tiền ba khang crom sầm nu số là code nhưng thời chẳng cả đấy này dương so it's you cannot do it but when you draw in your hand can you do in case when you draw in your hand you can do it nó bây giờ dương pra đai dương mà cu hay tham value á anh nắng xua đây apa hai nhưng thưa bạn còn in coding you cannot do it so the easiest way you just okay what is select matrix that you want 2 by 2 or 3 by 3
2 by 2
okay just pick up 2 by 2 so first this one is sorry 4 multiplied by 5 I just convert it to one dimensional array so I will have index 1 to 20 right
bạn là khổ
so the first for example I just put the original one is 4 and 5 and you convert to the other is JKL sorry can you understand from this the process អ្នកនរគ្នាយល់ process មួយនេះអត់យល់លោកគ្រូ okay so after that I have one array so the easiest way you use linked list ស្គាល់ linked list តើគ្នាយើង
ស្គាល់
okay ចេះធ្វើមិនចេះធ្វើខ្ញុំអត់ដឹងណាប៉ុន្តែមូលហេតុអីយើងប្រើ linked list ដោយសារតែនៅពេលដែលយើង adjust ឬក៏ដក element របស់ index យើងអត់បាច់ប្រែប្រួលតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹង variable declaration ទេនៅពេលដែលយើងប្រើ index របស់យើង declaration នៅពេលដែលយើង declare specific index វាធ្វើឲ្យយើង ខាត់ space ទី1ហើយទី2ខ្ញុំសួរថាយើងយល់ថា data របស់យើងនឹងវាប៉ុន្មានជាក់លាក់អត់ជាក់លាក់ទេអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើងឧទាហរណ៍ select matrix ដើម្បីយើងមកធ្វើ pooling របស់ខ្ញុំ select យកម៉ាន 2 គុណ 2 មិនអញ្ចឹងទេ2គុណ 2 ឃើញម៉ានហ្នឹងយើង4អញ្ចឹងនៅពេលអាហ្នឹងនៅពេលដែលយើង access data ដើម្បីមកធ្វើ pooling ម្ដង access ម្ដង 4 element first iteration ខ្ញុំដាក់អូខេខ្ញុំដាក់ first iterations ខ្ញុំ select index sorry 1ដល់ម៉ានបើយើងចាប់ពី0ទៅអូខេ0ទៅ3 so នៅពេលដែលយើងប្រើ link list អានេះសល់ម៉ានអូខេ L 1ទៅ3ទៅខ្ញុំនៅពេលដែលយើងគណនាតម្លៃប្រើ mark របស់វាយើងគ្រាន់តែយក input អាហ្នឹង so our result have to be អានេះខ្ញុំកាត់ខ្ញុំប្រើ mark ណាប៉ុណ្ណេះយល់ទេ
យក maximum នៃ
អានេះ map pooling
ហ្នឹងហើយយក
ហ្នឹង
បាទ
ប៉ុណ្ណឹងអ្នកផ្សេងយល់ទេម្ចាស់សំណួរមិញ step ប៉ុណ្ណឹងយល់ទេបន្តមកទៀត what we do so our L as a result our L សល់ប៉ុន្មាន
សល់មួយលោកគ្រូមកតម្លៃ
no our L នេះសល់ប៉ុន្មានអានេះ max L យើងឃើញ value 0.7ទេ so our L សល់10ប៉ុន្មានបើយើងប្រើ link list វានឹងអត់តអាចាស់ឲ្យយើងមិនអញ្ចឹងទេ
ក៏18ហ្នឹងគ្រូ
14ចេញមិនសល់18 số 13 មានប៉ុន្មាន element
មាន4 element
ដក4 element ទៅណា link list របស់យើងសល់ប៉ុន្មាន element
1 ដល់
and then យើង add mark l ក៏ពិតខ្ញុំសេវច្រាស់ចាំតិចខ្ញុំ copy ដាក់ឲ្យវិញ0ដល់3 2 l 1 យើងបាន l ថ្មីណានៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះ Control X and process ប៉ុណ្ណេះយល់ទេយើងជាធម្មតាយើងត្រូវការ matrix as your friend said that we would like to have the kernel pulling by 2 by 2 so it means that I pick up only 4 elements from our matrix and then find the maximum it take value to add to the other linked list and then our old linked list will diminish reduce from 20 elements to 16 elements តើចំណុចនេះយល់ទេ
អូវេលោកគ្រូខ្ញុំឆ្ងល់មួយទៀត
បាទមក
ខ្ញុំឆ្ងល់ថាកន្លែង link 20ហ្នឹងលោកគ្រូដាក់វាជាយើង store វាជាលក្ខណៈមិនវិញលោកគ្រូចាថា
link array
ដឹងថា array លោកគ្រូតែ matrix ឧទាហរណ៍ matrix យើងមិនមានrow មួយ column តែដល់ពេលយើងរក maximum ហ្នឹងយើងបែកវាត្រូវចេញជា
ឃើញអាហ្នឹងឃើញខ្លាចជា one dimensional data ឯង row column មានន័យថាមាន i j 4 5នៅពេលដែលខ្លាចជា one dimensional data មាន j ទៀតអត់
បើ one dimension វាអត់មានទៀតទេលោកគ្រូអត់មានណាអត់ទេ
អញ្ចឹងរបៀប conform data របស់យើងសំណួរសួរថា output result ចុងក្រោយបងអស់យើងចង់បានប្រមាណគុណប៉ុណ្ណឹងឧទាហរណ៍ខ្ញុំចង់បាន result ចុងក្រោយធំបំផុតគឺ2គុណ2 result ចុងក្រោយទិន្នន័យ original របស់យើង4គុណ5អញ្ចឹងឯងគេយើងលទ្ធផលចុងក្រោយទាំងអស់2គុណ2អញ្ចឹងតម្លៃដែលយើងនឹងត្រូវយកមកសិក្សា at least result របស់ចេញពី link list គឺ must be ផលធំជាង2 element ចេញជា result អញ្ចឹងអូខេអ្នកនរគ្នាមើល iteration សិន iteration ទី1យើង pick up for value យើងប្រើ maximum pulling ដើម្បីរក maximum របស់វាហើយ add ចូល link list ថ្មី link list ចាស់របស់យើង ឥឡូវខ្ញុំសួរចេះ L អងយើងមានប៉ុន្មាន element ហើយ
មាន4
1
ច្រឡំ
មិនត្រូវ4អូខេ process second iteration mid iteration វាធ្វើម្ដងកាពិតវាត្រូវធ្វើម្ដងទាំងអស់ណាប៉ុន្តែយើង pick up L របស់យើងមកទៅដើរពួកជាធម្មតាអានេះវារង្កិល index ឲ្យ auto មិនអញ្ចឹងហ៎
បាទលោកគ្រូ
Okay so when it scale no iterate the index so we pick up the same L0 to L3 and then we take maximum from L0 to L3 and then we add that mark values to the second index of L1 so in this case how many we still left
12លោក
okay third iterations the same but we just only change L to index 3 and this one equal to
8
sorry x for iterations when I teach for the first time in this course, your senior do not use coding. Your senior use Excel. ខ្ញុំចង់ប្រាប់ថាខ្ញុំបរៀនក្រុមពួកជំនាន់សិស្សច្បងយើងដំបូងពេលខ្ញុំចេញដំបូង2018 2019សិស្សច្បងយើងប្រើ Excel គាត់អត់ប្រើ coding ទេអានឹងមិន
4 លោកគ្រូ
ប្រហែល
0
អស់ ខ្ញុំសួរគ្នាយើងឥឡូវខ្ញុំរិចដល់ result មួយ2គុណ2នៅ element L ថ្មីយើងមានប៉ុន្មាន element
5
5ដល់ពេល result យើងចង់បានប៉ុន្មានគុណប៉ុន្មាន
2 គុណ 2
4 maximum 4 repeat convolution ដល់ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះគេហៅថា population មានថាចំនួនដងដែលយើងធ្វើអូខេអានឹងចំនួន population របស់យើងឥឡូវយើង estimate វាទៅប្រហែលអាចធ្វើតែ2ទេ populations equal to 2អញ្ចឹង the first population here so just one population 1 and population 2 first iterations បានអានេះខ្លាចជាអីគេម្ដង
L1 ម្ដងលោកគ្រូ
Okay, good. L1 អានេះ
1 ដល់ 5
L2
L2 អីសល់បាន
បើយក4សល់1
នឹងរបស់ពេលយើងត្រូវ add ជាធម្មតាយើងឥឡូវយើងចង់បានប៉ុណ្ណឹង iteration sorry second iterations sorry just say okay ខ្ញុំ copy from this one ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះយើងត្រូវដាក់ condition ហើយប្រសិនបើ L យើង nil ធ្វើម៉េចមិនត្រូវ adjust index មិនចឹងទេ L លេខ0មានទេ
L លេខ0មានលោកគ្រូ
L លេខ1មានអត់
អត់មានទេ
សំណួរសួរថាតើយើងគួរយកតម្លៃវាប៉ុណ្ណាប្រសិនបើនេះអាប្រសិនបើនេះហ่าប្រសិនបើយើងចង់ឲ្យវា relate ជាមួយនឹង previous data អ្នកនរគ្នាអាច pick up some three of data បបោមកធ្វើជា relation សងខាងក៏ប៉ុន្តែបើសិនករណី easy way បំផុតជាធម្មតាអា color បន្តវាមិនស្តៀងគ្នាមិនអញ្ចឹងទេចឹងអ្នកនរគ្នាគឺត្រូវ pick up យក L10 L11 L12 ស្មើគ្នាទាំងអស់អញ្ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះយើងនឹងទទួលបាន L2 ថ្មីហើយសំណួរសួរថាទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងអស់នៅទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងគឺអស់ហើយក៏ប៉ុន្តែទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងបានប៉ុន្មានគុណប៉ុន្មាន
បាន2គុណបាន1គុណ2
ទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងមានតែ2ទិន្នន័យទេសំណួរសួរថាទិន្នន័យដែលយើងចង់បានគឺអ្វីដែលយើងចង់បាន output របស់យើង output is 2 multiplied by 2មិនអញ្ចឹងទេធ្វើមិនបាន adjust បានឧទាហរណ៍ទិន្នន័យយើងបាន3 array របស់យើងណា array របស់យើង3និង12ធ្វើម៉េច What is the suitable result I use average this time average ឃើញបានគ្នាយើង matrix យើង
ដូចជា 7.5
3 12 sorry matrix it should be here sorry and then I just put enter and then space again អានេះមែន
យក average របស់ របស់វាមែនគ្រូ
average របស់ neighbor របស់វាមែន
average មានតែ3មួយគ្រូ
ចានេះមែន
នេះ average វាមើល 7.5 12 បូក 3
understand បានទេរបៀបធ្វើហើយសំណួរជាធម្មតាគេ define matrix គេអត់ដែលយល់ output 10 គុណ 10 20 គុណ 20 ទេដោយសារអីយើង row neighbor ពិបាកអញ្ចឹងអា2បើ2យ៉ាង3 row neighbor ស្រួលទេសំណួរ neighbor អា1នេះគឺជារបស់ទាំង line ណាដែលមាន i ស្មើគ្នា j ស្មើគ្នាមិនអញ្ចឹងទេ neighbor អា1នេះគឺ i របស់វាស្មើគ្នាហើយនឹង j ស្មើគ្នាអានេះ index របស់វា i ស្មើគ្នាហើយនឹង j ស្មើគ្នាយកបានទាំងអស់ចុះអាហ្នឹងគឺស្រួលបំផុត while i ស្មើ j while i ស្មើ i j ស្មើ j ឬក៏ i ព្រីមស្មើ i ព្រីមស្មើ i j ព្រីមស្មើ j អញ្ចឹង value របស់យើងទោះបីករណី j ស្មើ j ព្រីម i ខុសគ្នាក៏បានដែរករណី i ព្រីមស្មើនឹង i j ខុសគ្នាក៏បានដែរអញ្ចឹង value របស់យើងចាប់បានទាំងអស់អញ្ចឹងទិន្នន័យចុងក្រោយគឺទទួលបានទិន្នន័យមួយនេះ2 គុណ 2 តាមសំណូមពរពរ input matrix នឹងចូលទៅក្នុង model យើង input ខ្ញុំនឹងដាក់ថា output matrix ឃើញលទ្ធផលចុងក្រោយយើងបានរូបមន្តរបស់យើង classification ទេទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងបើសិនករណីយើងចូលអានេះអា model របស់យើងមកស្មុគស្មាញ model របស់យើងបើសិនបើករណី hidden layer 1000 hidden layer ហើយសំណួរសួរថាបើយើងយកអាទិន្នន័យ original មកធ្វើឃើញ C process ច្រើនទេនៅពេលដែលយើង normalize វាឃើញ C process តិចទេយល់បានខ្ញុំចាស់សំណួរនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះប្រសិនបើករណីយើងអត់ convert មុនសិនទេហើយយើងយកមកសិក្សាយើងអត់ convert មុនហើយយើងយកអាតាម technique អាចាស់ពី population 1 2 មកប្រើទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងច្បាស់ជាចេញ3 12 12 12ប្រសិនបើអ្នកនរគ្នាយក technique ខាងលើមកប្រើឬក៏3 0 0ពីចុះគេប្រើ0 0នេះគេប្រើអា neighbor ប៉ុណ្ណាយកប៉ុណ្ណឹងប្រើ0 0វាប៉ះពល color rank value ខុសទទួលបានទេបើសិនករណីយើង repeat អា population ខាងលើយើងមកដដែលអញ្ចឹងទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងគឺបានប៉ុណ្ណឹងក៏ប៉ុន្តែនៅពេលយើងព្យាយាម convert អានឹងទៅជា matrix ហើយតាមយើងយកមក calculate ក្រោយអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើងបានលទ្ធផលរបស់យើងទៅពី data យើងចង់ convert វាទៅ2 គុណ 2 អញ្ចឹង the first value second value the third value must be i ស្មើ i ឬក៏ j ស្មើ j ចឹងករណីនេះអាទី3មាន j អត់អាទី3អត់មាន j ទេអញ្ចឹងមានតែ i ទេ i របស់វាស្មើ3អញ្ចឹងយកវាស្មើ3 the four value i វាមានអត់នេះយើងប្រកាសទី3មានអញ្ចឹងអា j វាក៏មានដែរអញ្ចឹងមានទាំង i មានទាំង j អញ្ចឹងយើង compare គ្នាមកយើងយកបានអញ្ចឹងអានេះ follow up rule population អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំដាក់ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះគឺ rule population ខាងនេះយើង adjust នេះ by ដល់ពេលអានេះគឺយើង adjust តាម convert ទៅជា matrix ហើយបាទយើង adjust វាក្រោយ យល់លេខគ្នាយើងត្រង់ចំណុចនេះ
លោកគ្រូខ្ញុំចង់សួរមួយទៀតអញ្ចឹងឧទាហរណ៍បើយើងគុណម្ដងយើងចង់បាន 2 គុណ 2 បើសិនជា result យើងបាន1 1 គុណ 2 ត្រូវអត់ចាស់វាថែមប៉ុន្តែបាទប៉ុន្តែយើងកណនាតម្លៃទៅឧទាហរណ៍យើងឃើញតម្លៃមួយអីចឹងលោកគ្រូប៉ុន្តែនៅពេលឧទាហរណ៍តែវាអាស្រ័យទៅលើយើង store វានៅក្នុង link list ដំបូងដែរលោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹង
តែlink list ហ្នឹងពេលដែលយើង store ជាឧទាហរណ៍មិញមាន L នៃ20អញ្ចឹង20ហ្នឹងយើង store ជាលក្ខណៈម៉េចវិញលោកគ្រូថាយើង store ពីខ្ញុំបាក់និយាយទៀតព្រោះ matrix វាមានជួដេកជួឈើអញ្ចឹង4គុណ5អញ្ចឹង
សំណួរសួរថាដូចប្រាប់អញ្ចឹងវគ្គមុនខ្ញុំមិនប្រាប់ថារបៀប loop របស់យើងដើម្បី convert មក dimensional data យើង convert មិនយើង loop មកជួហើយអត់ចាស់ជួបន្ទាប់អត់ចាស់ជួបន្ទាប់ឬក៏យើងចង់ loop អានេះមកជួឲ្យអស់ហើយតាមអត់ចាស់ជួនេះក្រោយសំណួរសួរថាមួយណាដើរទាំងពីរប្រើមួយណា
បាទដាតខ្ញុំចង់បាទលោកគ្រូតែខ្ញុំចង់ដឹងថាតម្លៃវាបើយើងដឹងថាតែយើងសន្មតថាមួយណាល្អជាង
អូខេចំណុចត្រង់ចំណុចនោះនៅពេលដែលយើងយក matrix បាន4គុណ5យកមកសិក្សាយើងនឹងឃើញថាអូលោកគ្រូអាហ្នឹងវាខុសគ្នាអាចឆ្ងាយលោកគ្រូធ្វើម៉េចទៅនៅក្នុង image វាអត់ដូចចឹងទេមកប៉ុណ្ណេះមកតម្លៃវាប៉ុណ្ណេះតែ1 pixel 1 pixel គឺមួយចំណុចទូចមួយរបស់ image ចឹងសំណួរសួរថាទិន្នន័យនេះសងខាងនេះស្តៀងគ្នាអត់ឧទាហរណ៍ចំណុចនេះចុះអាសងខាងនេះជុំវិញវានឹងស្តៀងគ្នាយើងចង់ root មកខាងនេះក៏ត្រូវចង់ root មកខាងនេះក៏ត្រូវដែរ so the value that about its neighborhood it's similar because image is the most high redundant intensity as I told you before that we work out correctly with image because image is the most redundant data. That's why this technique or this method can apply. If you ask me that when I try to convert, can I use this one? You can. And then can I use this one? You can. If you ask me which one produce a better performance, a better result, we cannot say. It depends on the kind of data that you use. Hello. យល់សំណួរយល់ចម្លើយចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះអ្នកនរគ្នាចង់ loop ជាប្រភេទ row ឬក៏ loop ជាប្រភេទ column វាអត់ជាបញ្ហាបញ្ហាត្រង់ថា data ដែលយើងយកមកដាក់ហ្នឹងជាប្រភេទ data មិនចឹងបើ data របស់យើងនៅពេល data ខ្លះវាដើរចំពោះ column data ខ្លះវាដើរចំពោះ row ចឹងអាហ្នឹងបើសួរថាមួយណាល្អជាង you have to make a trial មានន័យថាម៉េចគ្នាយើង
សាកល្
បងវាម្ដងនេះម្ដងនោះទៅ select យកអាណាដែល better performance ទៅបានដែរអូខេម្ចាស់សំណួរទទួលយកបានទេ
បានលោកគ្រូទទួលយកបានលោកគ្រូ
ហ្នឹងអានេះប្រាប់ម្សាយបើថាស្ដាប់អង់គ្លេសខ្ញុំមិនបានដឹងទេពួកអានេះដូចបញ្ញរដ្ឋទៅសួរម្សាយសួរថារត់ទៅឆ្វេងពីឆ្វេងទៅស្ដាំឬក៏ពីលើចុះក្រោមមុនអាណាល្អជាង it depend on the data you can try to make any way possible but in case of testing and research you have to make a trial and the way that make you do that do you have only this way no you have a lot of way but this is the one common way that easy to simulate with your code writing because we just convert it to one-dimensional data and then how much matrix that you would like to make pooling and then you just select and then make a pooling based on those data some other they work with this position for example if I take 2 by 2 I will capture 2 by 2 to learn and ខ្ញុំសូមជួបប្រសេសថ្មីណាគ្នាយើងរបៀបធ្វើមួយទៀត populations Okay, population ones. When I have, for example, data A, data delta A 5 multiplied by 4, and if you ask me that in case of make looping, if you would like to learn not a flow as here, you can make the other flow is for I. Nhưng ta sẽ chỉ algorithm á, nhưng mà ta sẽ chỉ code đấy. From I from 0 to 3. 3. 4. J from 0 to 3. Ends. In this case, as in this case, បើសិនករណីយើងចង់ប្រើ mark គ្នាយើង
លោកគ្រូប្រើ for loop ហ្នឹង 4x4 ឬក៏ 5x4
អានេះ 0x4
0
sorry យើងត្រូវការតែ2ឯងអញ្ចឹង0ដល់ sorry 0ដល់0 1 2 យើងត្រូវការ2តំណែងមិនអញ្ចឹងហ៎ we need as output I put it as O 2 and 2 run ពី0ដល់2 run ប៉ុន្មានដង 2 ដងក៏3ដង in case you write in Python or some programming language, it learn different. So if you run 0 to 2, sometimes some algorithm run 3 times, some only run 2 times. So I just put okay, 1 specific 0 and 1. Okay. And then this technique I use mark technique, mark pooling. Just use mark pooling. So I just s equal to mark function. You can write by yourself mark function A. In this case, if our delta have only once, so let's wait a bit. How can I write program in this case?
លោកគ្រូចង់បាន result វាហ្មងមែនលោកគ្រូ
អត់មានចង់បាន result ទេរបៀបធ្វើការរបស់យើងគឺយើងអត់ចង់ធ្វើការពីតែមួយជួរអញ្ចឹងឯងយើងចង់ធ្វើការនេះម្ដង 4 ម្ដង 4 ម្ដង 4 ម្ដង 4 យើងធ្វើការម្ដង 4 ម្ដង 4 អញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលយើងធ្វើការម្ដង 4
មើលហើយលេខម៉ាននេះលេខ 1 ថ្ងៃកុំតន់អលេខ
តែគ្នាយើងស្អីគេ
លោកគ្រូ record លោកគ្រូ
តែគាត់ច្រឡំតិចអាចបាក់ម៉ាច់លោកគ្រូ
នៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះនៅពេលដែលយើងចង់សិក្សាម្ដងមួយចេះសិក្សាមកចប់យកតម្លៃមួយនឹងសិក្សាមកចប់យកតម្លៃមួយនឹងយកសិក្សាមកចប់យកតម្លៃមួយនឹងអញ្ចឹងអា 4 មានន័យថាយើង run loop ម្ដង 4 នៅក្នុង index array របស់យើងទាំងអស់អញ្ចឹងយើង run ម្ដង 2 ទៅទឹង what is it in our case យើង run ម្ដង 2 loop វាម្ដង 2 ទៅ 2 សិក្សាម្ដងទៅទឹង 2 បដោយ 2 ទៅទឹង 2 បដោយ 2 បានមក value អញ្ចឹង add អានឹងចូល array one dimensional ហើយបន្តមកទៀត convert ទៅវាជាប្រភេទ two dimensional array អញ្ចឹងអានឹងខ្ញុំអាចនិយាយចេះអូខេខ្ញុំអត់ទៅសេជា code ព្រោះខ្ញុំទៅសេ convert code វាអាចគិតយូរច្រើនស្មុគស្មាញអញ្ចឹង I just write algorithm one step first we select select we select I just put here A 2 by 2 then convert convert ត្រង់ចំណុចនេះមានន័យថា convert to only one value and then we select next A ចឹង A របស់យើងត្រង់ចំណុចនេះមានន័យថា A របស់យើងឡើងម្ដង2 next A 2 ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះនៅពេលខ្ញុំដាក់ value របស់យើងជាប្រភេទអូខេខ្ញុំដាក់ I ស្មើនឹង 2 ចឹងមុនដំបូងបំផុតខ្ញុំឲ្យអក្សរនេះអាមួយនេះរត់ចឹងខ្ញុំរត់ម្ដងបូកអក្សរ I then convert thenខ្ញុំចង់សេជា x វិញ h convert to one value until I index weight ហឹងហើយអញ្ចឹងយើង weight មុន weight of matrix out of rank នៅពេលដែល weight matrix out of rank ខ្ញុំនឹងធ្វើ select មួយសារទៀត គឺ select A ថ្មីដែល A របស់យើងស្ថិតនៅក្នុង 2 until weight ខ្ញុំចូលថា I ស្មើ 2 បូក h weight របស់យើងគឺរត់តាមជួរទទឹងហើយបន្តមកទៀតត្រង់ចំណុចនេះគឺអា 2h នឹងដដែលហើយ 2 plus y ស្មើ y ដែរ until then convert into one value until y ខ្ញុំដាក់ត្រង់នេះ j y ហើយចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំចង់ mention ប្រាប់អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺខ្ញុំ loop របស់វាខ្ញុំអត់ loop ធ្វើជា data របស់យើងមួយជួរអញ្ចឹងទេអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំចង់ loop គឺខ្ញុំ loop របស់វាគឺ loop ម្ដងពីរទាំង column ទាំង column ទាំង row ដើម្បី data របស់យើងកុំឲ្យវាមានចំណុចមួយគឺ redundant ដាច់ពីគ្នាអញ្ចឹងនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះខ្ញុំ loop តាម I ចេញមកមួយជួរ 2 ហើយរង្កិលវាម្ដងមួយកម្មរហូតដល់ I out of rank ហើយបន្តមកទៀតតម្លាក់មួយកម្មទៀត then repeat ចឹងនៅពេលដែលនៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះប្រសិនបើអ្នកនរគ្នាចង់ឲ្យអានេះ option របស់វា sorry នៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះខ្ញុំដាក់ color របស់វាជាប្រភេទ optional sorry មូលហេតុអីជាធម្មតាបើយើងចង់ឧទាហរណ៍យើង work out ពីអូខេ block នេះហើយធ្វើការ block នេះអ្នកនរគ្នាទៅរំកិលវាម្ដងមួយកម្មរហូតដល់អានេះអស់ហើយបានយើងទៅតម្លាក់ J របស់យើងមក2ម្ដងទៀតហើយបន្តទៀតអង្គនេះធ្វើការមួយកម្ម repeat រហូតដល់ the same process ហើយបានតម្លាក់មួយកម្មទៀតអញ្ចឹងទិន្នន័យរបស់យើងគឺវាអត់ឲ្យផ្លាស់ប្ដូរទាំង row តាម1 row ឬក៏មួយ column ទេទិន្នន័យរបស់យើង relate ទាំង neighbor row relate ទាំង neighbor column នៅត្រង់ចំណុចនេះយល់ទេរបៀបសរសេរកូដតើអ្នកគ្នាយកកូដ Excel ធម្មតាមួយប្រមាណគុណប្រមាណហើយបន្តមកទៀតអ្នកគ្នាសរសេរ generate វាមក play ទៅគឺចេញហើយរបៀបធ្វើវាមួយកម្មរបៀបរំកិលវាតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងឯងរបៀបដែលយើងអាច edit ឬ adjust ទៅលើ pixel បានវិធីសាស្ត្រស្រួលបំផុតអានេះវាអាចអ្នកគ្នាធ្វើ loop ពីរតង់ហើយក្នុងនោះវាអ្នកគ្នាទៅឡើងម្ដងមួយកម្មអញ្ចឹងពិបាកមើលកុំតែពេលយើងសរសេរកូដមែនទែនទៅសរសេរកូដឲ្យមែនទែនទៅ our code is just only increase or increase only one time to index in order to make those kind 2 multiplied by 2 until only to one value. This is the pseudo, it's not pseudocode, it's like a algorithm as attached for you to apply in coding. So the way that I would like to suggest to you, this one perhaps you will lose some data, but it is an easy trail let you to process your work. So this is the way that you would like to adjust or edit the matrix to be the square while we make kernel pooling. So in our work, after the result pooling, you can have a small data in order to put into our neural network model. So when you have small data, our model can run faster than before. If you have like a higher data and our model, for example, I put 1000 hidden layer. So it's mean that those kind of data will produce very high value performance to the system. So when our system consumes so much resource, how our model can produce a higher accuracy. The system still not good because you have to follow the process by buying a lot of component or machine to compute your code. So in our practice case, we have one data set we call NSI is a kind of modified National Institute Standard of Technology data set. It's a one kind of well-known data set that they use a handwriting to write a letter. After that, they make a segmentation. It means that we have make a segmentation to find the sample of data. So we have like 6 in the data resource. They put only 50,000 image, but when you run execute the code, you will see 60,000 and then 10,000 as a testing set. And when you have this image and then you try to cut the scope of image, our input pixel of image is 20 multiplied by 20. So it's a very small image. If we compare to our technique, for example, if I cut from this image, perhaps it's higher than 28 to 28, but they try to reduce to 28 to 28. So in this case, if you would like to normalize the data from one big amount of height and weight of pixel to 28 to 28, you can use the same technique from the first algorithm that I give to you is convert those data to convert the data to one-dimensional. After that, when you try to convert it and then you get the result, the new data less than or equal to 28 multiplied by 28. So you have to pick up those data, and then you have to adjust it again to be equal 28 to multiplied by 28. So I give this example to you. For example, the original data is 500 multiplied by 500 through the populations. Through the population, for example, you have to pulling. You have to pull it to 28 multiply by 28. So when you make a pooling, in this case, if the result of your population less than or equal to 28 multiply by 28, you stop populations. So we have to cast if equal percent by Wisma directly 28 to 28, we do no need to adjust the pixel. But if not, it's been less than. So you have to adjust by adding the additional pixel with the last value of array to reach index equal to 28 multiplied by 28. So this is the most easiest way to convert the data. And you see, this is the algorithm that we try to apply, the easiest one that you can try to apply it. It's very easy. After that, with our sample of the data, they try to make a segment of this image, but this is just only the picture. The real data, they have 60,000 image as a training set and 10,000 image as testing. So totally we have 7,000. And the size of image is 28. The class specification output that we would like to have is 10 class 0 to 9. So this data process the document for implementations, and the basic command, the process flow of this algorithm work is, first of all, we input image to one-dimensional data, pixel multiply. You know, this is the reason that I always show you. And then we normalize image, because in neural network, you have to know that in neural network, the value, they work only from 0 to 1. So we have to multiply by 255, because the maximum value of intensity value of the pixel is from 0 to 255. So we have to divide by 255 to get the floating number. And then we make column មានន័យថានៅពេលដែល hidden layer របស់យើងមានប៉ុណ្ណាយើង categorize input របស់វាមកធ្វើការនៅក្នុង column របស់វាម្ដងប៉ុណ្ណឹងហើយយើងប្រើ consequential model ជាប្រភេទមាន input one hidden layer and output, and then our number of node in the hidden layer, we have output dense and we call dense, we have output dense, and then we have hidden layer dense, and then we train, and then we make the predictions. So this is the process. So I will view with the code for you to see. I already upload this code for you, but the upload one, I do not print this one. You can print it by yourself because I just would like to see the data. So the package, the data that I extract from them is a kind of an ASCII data. So I just import this library into my code, and then I load the data. So it means that I can take all 60,000 image from the data set, and 10,000 as a test set from dataset 2. And then I load image from two kind. One is a test set, and we have two-dimensional data, and the training set and test set. And then we have Keras model. It's the model that they try to build a sequential modeling. So when we try to, this one is just only to print data. After that, we flattening the data into one-dimensional data. We have data 16,000 data and 10,000 data converts to one-dimensional data. That one image contain this number of pixels. After that, with the training set, we convert those values to be the floating number, because normally when we try to extract the data from our data set, it will be like a decimal number 0 to 255. So you have to convert those values to floating number from domain 0 to 1. So how? We just divide it by 255, so it's a floating number. This one just only convert the type. We do not scale the domain of value, convert the type from decimal to floating number. After that, we just use this function in Python. Slash equal, it means that x train equal to x train itself divided by 255. X test equal to x test itself divided by 55. Number of class in this case is number of population that it will run. So we will make an input into our systems, and then building linear stack of layer with the sequential model. So if you ask me how they construct this sequential, you will see this one. In our model, sequential model, we have input layer, one hidden layer, and then one output layer. So input layer, as you see in this one, we have the class 10 inputs per time. And sorry, for the input per time is all intensity of one image. After that, you have number of node in the hidden layer 1000. You can, I just use 100 for example. You can read it by yourself. And activation function that you use is ReLU, but I do not know how does it work for ReLU, but you can check by yourself because I'm not a skillful in this one. I just would like to let you to know about the way they use. We can use neural network to build one model. After that, we put it as output. This is output layer, only 10. And then we put to compile those codes, and then we fit the model to see the result. So this is just only the process that you see at the moment in our Microsoft Word that I just sent you. This is the full process step by step that they already have. First of all, they have the data. The second of all, they try to normalize the data to be the real input. They defined hidden layer, number of nodes. They define output layer and number of output nodes. After that, they input the data into the training set to the data to train the model. After that, they put the testing data to test the model. So this is the process that we make the assumption of our work. So I will run it. You just ignore because it's just only the error some point of some function, but the answer we still can work. So you have like 10 epoch, it means 10 time running. So our input, we have like 784 input. So this is the number of node in hidden layer, and then number of node in the number of node in hidden layer and number of node in output layer. And this one, you see, you have input 755. Why you have like add 100 more parameter? Because one input matches to 10 node of the hidden layer. So we have to have like weight parameter. In this case is number of the weight. So our weight, we have like number of input multiplied by number of the hidden in the node. So in this case is the same. So our total parameter, as you see, we multiply all together and then plus together, you will see. And then trainable parameter is mean all parameter, or you can say all the weight that initial and then we update. So this is the total weight that have been updated and trained. And to generate the model, no parameter that cannot be trained. And the first run is mean that I run for the first, and then to see accuracy, I get only 93% correct predictions. And then I rerun it again by use activate function. In this case, when try to update the weight and by us, I use Adam. So in this case, you can search Adam in this kind of code. You will see the full GitHub of their work. And Adam function will update the weight and then we rerun it again. And then we will get the other higher value. And we rerun again until 10 times. You will see you increase to 97% correct accuracy. It means that if you have 100 data to predict, your correct prediction is 97 or 98 prediction. For example, if I increase to 20, it means that I increase the population to 20. So what is the result? Let me check. As you see, why they use epoch only 20, only 10? Because you see from the epoch number 10, there is no improvement significant from iteration 10. So they decide to run only 10 times, because if it ran many times, they just only make the worst case. So they will stop. So this is one way that we try to tell you that in order to evaluate one system, how many times should we run? You have to make a test trail. For example, I run 5 times, I run 10 times, I run 25, I run 30. So which one has a significant improvement? In this case, from the number that we would like to input in this one. So from the iteration number 11, they have no significant improve. So in this case, we get only this. For example, I reduce only to 5, but I increase the number of the node in the hidden layer. So what will be the result? You see, you increase to 1000, it will increase one more. As you see, when I try to increase the hidden node, increase the number of node in the hidden layer, but I just only run 5 times. And then I can get accuracy 97%, but this one is just only something significant. For example, if I run to 10, As you see at the moment, from iteration number 6, you see it increased to 98. After that, it reduced back. So it means that iteration from this one, I just use only 6 iterations. It will produce a better performance in my systems. You see, only runs first time you get different results. So the way they try to update the model and produce a model is different. But when you try to run something, they have two things that you have to consider. One, performance, the other one as accuracy. Accuracy, you get 99%, but let's check your time. It takes like 3 seconds and 2 seconds. For example, if I use only 10, I will like run performance very fast, but accuracy is very low. You see, only 1 second. But let you see, the performance fast, but the accuracy is very low. So when you try to build some model using machine learning algorithm, they have two ways that you have to consider. First one is about the time consumption that you use to run each step in the process. And after that, you think about accuracy. And you have to make balance those both. If you ask me that how to balance it, you have to set the hypothesis performance matrix that you would like. For example, you said your advisor said that if you can run your system accuracy more than 95 is okay. So you should keep run something that increase to 95. After that, you can rearrange the value of this one to get 95, and you can increase step by step. For our case, we use like 10 node in the hidden layer. Okay, you say that 10 node is not work. I use a 50 node. I use 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 until one kind of the accuracy reach to 95. So I can select that value to present to my teacher. Okay. So your work. Okay. What I simulate the code for you to do. So I will edit. You just note in yourself. First of all, rerun the code and to get accuracy, reruns with editing parameter to get rerun the code and editing the parameter to get accuracy resi 96% at least. And then provide the explanations. Sorry. And then it provide explanation about the parameter and number of executions. So this is the first assignment that you have to do. And then create or find one model of system using neural network for animal classification and explain the process and result. This is your assignment. So in our Microsoft team, I will create the assignments. Let's wait a bit. Okay. In this case, I cannot create assignment yet. Please wait a bit. Sorry. So for our assignments, I will create one assignment that you have to rerun and editing the parameter to get the accuracy. The title is about using neural network to build a model and simulate it for a number and animal classification. For I just say for classification. Okay, instructions. Reruns the code with the editing parameter to get accuracy 96 percentage and provide the explanations of your parameter and number of epochs. Number of epochs or number of executions. After that, create or find the model of system or model of system using neural network for animal classifications and explain the process and result. This is your submission. So your process and result, I will put the note. As you see that some of your senior have the problem with my course. Also some of you from previous year. So this case copy equal to 0 100%.
លោកគ្រូពាក់ព័ន្ធនឹងanimal classification ហ្នឹងយើងមាន data នៅក្នុង Keras ស្រាប់តែលោកគ្រូ
នៅក្នុង Keras មាន data animal ផងមាន data close ផងអញ្ចឹង data set យើងយកពីណាក៏បានដែរហើយ code យកពីណាក៏បានដែរឲ្យតែបាន animal classification មកឲ្យពួកខ្ញុំ
បាទលោកគ្រូ
ខ្ញុំអាចសរសេរ code ក្នុង TensorFlow បានអត់
code anywhere
Okay, អរគុណលោកគ្រូ
language any language as you prefer because when you try to explain to me you just only copy the result to me and then you copy your code you copy your result and then you explain it so if you can understand the way you present to me so it means that however where did you bring up your code you copy from your friends but if you can explain it well it means that you can understand the process so it's okay the mean copy equal to 0 it means that and the deadlines I will put sorry I will put next month Friday so you have 1 week to go just only go and find in internet and try to understand it just only this the same thing again. Okay, now we finish our lesson NTP class. Do you have any questions? Can ask. An assignment have been assigned. And for the explanation here, I think you can understand by the process, just only this sentence here. Here. So the way that you ask me about, teacher, how can I pulling and convert the matrix? So you just, do I let you have the message or not? Oh no. I don't allow you to send the message. So wait a bit. Okay, now I change mine to be the attendee. Still the same. Okay.
Lúc khu Lý công xua thaអាច send link ឲ្យបានអត់ធ្វើហើយព្រោះគាត់ធ្វើលើ Google Colab
គឺគាត់អាចយកអានឹង copy បានដាក់ក្នុង page បានតែក្នុង Microsoft បានតា
បាទលោកគ្រូ
មូលហេតុអីខ្ញុំអត់យក link ទេព្រោះអីវាធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំ see process ត្រង់ថាខ្ញុំចូលក្នុង internet ហើយខ្ញុំចូលទៅក្នុង position មួយហ្នឹងហើយបានខ្ញុំ evaluate ចាញ់អញ្ចឹងអត់យកអីអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំចង់បាន result និង explanation in one text word. Okay?
បាទលោកគ្រូ
So do you have any questions? Please note that អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាធ្លាប់ដឹងតែគ្រូដែលញ៉ាញ៉ៃ rule ញ៉ាញ៉ៃជាងគេគឺខ្ញុំធ្លាក់ច្រើនជាងគេក៏ខុសមួយខ្ញុំដែរអញ្ចឹង pay attention បន្តិចហើយអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាត្រូវយល់ថាខ្ញុំអត់នៅសាលាទេ So I don't care anymore in this case. The thing that I care about you is I teach you, I make you understand. But if you don't pay attention, you bear the consequence. Okay, I just stop now. So far, I speak alone, mostly alone. So enjoy your weekend and enjoy your assignment.
អរគុណលោកគ្រូ
Okay, bye bye everyone.
ជំរាបលាលោកគ្រូ
បាទ
ជំរាបលាលោកគ្រូ
ខ្ញុំដឹងតែគ្នាយើងអ្នកខ្លះគឺបើក mood ទឹកចោល
គឺ